Please welcome to the stage Zoe Ryan.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Zoe Ryan. For those that don't know me, I am the director of the Hammer Museum, and it gives me enormous pleasure to see so many of you here this afternoon, on this glorious afternoon for this wonderful program organised by the World Around and Fondation Cartier pour l'Art Contemporain. The Hammer Museum at UCLA acknowledges our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. You are in for a fantastic afternoon of conversations from a range of architects, designers, theorists, all on the topic of transformation, and particularly transformation in the face of climate change. My heartfelt thanks to Beatrice Galilee and Beatrice Grenier for their vision and dedication to creating today's program. The World Around has been hosting architecture and design summits around the globe for many, many years, and I'm very glad that the Hammer could host their first Los Angeles program. Today's topic is front of mind for all of us that live in this great city. We are just 13 months past the devastating fires in Altadena and the Pacific Palisades, which have changed this city not just physically, but also psychologically. We have seen, however, this city's resilience in the wake of the fire and its desire to rebuild in a more thoughtful way, one that acknowledges that these fires were just one manifestation of the climate crisis and that our built environment must be responsive to the changing world. I hope that this will be the first of many collaborations with the World Around, and that it also serves as a signal of a renewed emphasis on architecture and design programs here at the museum. The Hammer has long been a leading forum for the exchange of ideas on a variety of topics that impact our daily lives and enrich our understanding of the world. I am very grateful to Claudia Besta, the Hammer's Director of Public Programs, and her team for spearheading a dynamic slate of programs week in and week out that have tackled everything from our current political climate to social and environmental issues to insightful discussions with artists, writers, filmmakers, architects, and designers. While you're here today, I hope you'll find some time to stop into our galleries to see Made in LA 2025, which is now in its final week, if you can believe that. This year's edition of our biennial brings together an intergenerational suite of 28 artists from across the Los Angeles region, presenting a range of works, including large-scale sculpture, painting, video, and more. Thank you all for coming today, and I hope you enjoy this fantastic program.
Please welcome to the stage Beatrice Galilee and Beatrice Grenier.
Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Béatrice Grenier. I am the Director of Strategic Projects and International Programs at Fondation Cartier pour l'Art Contemporain. As part of its international program, the Fondation Cartier partners with institutions around the world to engage in multidisciplinary and cross-cultural exchange, as well as foster a planetary dialogue through culture. It's really, truly an honor to join the Hammer and the World Around to discuss this afternoon how designers and architects are at the center of movement and change, and to support their work in catalyzing new ways of thinking and living together. With our program Transformation this afternoon, we hope to provoke a reflection that will go beyond this afternoon around the notion of metamorphosis truly as the core philosophy and mandate of architecture today. This is the third of a series of programs that we worked together with and co-curated with the World Around and with Beatrice Galilei, my dear colleague, starting already 3 years ago. In 2023, we elaborated a program called Radical Repair, which really sought to go beyond the current trends in architecture to return to a previous state of nature or of the natural world. In 2024, we worked on a program called Planetary Landscapes, which sought to search for new tools and new scales for architecture to change cities. And today with Transformation, I view this as a continuation of our ongoing collaboration and co-curatorial approach to bring about a reflection on what we hope to see in architecture, which is its constant potential to change and to change cities, but also to change itself. So I would like to deeply thank Zoe Ryan for this opportunity for the Fondation Cartier to engage with audiences here in LA on the very crucial topic of transformation. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Beatrice Galilei. I'm the founder and director of The World Around. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you to Beatrice Grenier and to Zoe Ryan for your collaboration, your curatorial leadership, and partnership in making this happen. For those of you meeting The World Around for the first time, I'm going to just say a few words about it, and then we're going to get on with the program. But the World Around is a global platform for architecture and design dedicated to championing the voices and ideas that shape our cities, planet, and future. Through public programming, institutional collaborations, mentorship initiatives, original writing, research, and storytelling, we spotlight practitioners who are responding to the challenges of our time with clarity, creativity, and resolve. Our work as a nonprofit centers on the most cutting edge of contemporary practice, convening the just completed, sometimes under construction projects that mark the moment we're living in. We record all our talks and all our videos and make them accessible to everybody on our website. And in that way, we each see ourselves as a first draft of architectural history, a way to share the stories and the stories of our time from the practitioners who are the only ones who can really tell them. We operate through a collaborative partnerships model, which allows us to work with some of the most important institutions in the world, when we work together and curate and promote institutional collaborations that have taken us to New York, to London, to Milan, Venice, Rotterdam, and we hope to continue collaborating in this way into the future. I will also say that as a curator, I've worked on architectural exhibitions and biennales, site-specific installations, and have continued to find ways to explain and share my passion for the work of the architects and designers that I know and admire. And I find that convenings such as this, where we get to hear directly from the people that are making the buildings and creating the visions for our future, to me, this is the way that I find to be the most clear, accessible, and impactful way to tell the stories and to curate architecture and design. I hope you agree, and I hope that you enjoy the program. In this first session, we have an extraordinary group of people under the thematic idea of flows of transformation. So we're going to hear from people who are absorbing and interpreting ideas of transformation through using design as a tool to recalibrate the environments in which we live. From climate change to biodiversity loss, from energy transition to accelerating influence of AI, from rapid urbanization to profound demographic shifts, the defining condition of our time is continual change. And architects and designers are no longer operating against a neutral backdrop. They're working within a dynamic system already in motion. The way that we work with this whole day is going to work is that each speaker will come on and speak for around 15 minutes, very rapid fire, one after the next. So it will be a kind of dizzying, dazzling, hopefully kind of polyphonic experience where you'll travel all around the world and hear from all kinds of practitioners. We're going to begin with Australian-born, New York-based researcher, author, and landscape architect Julia Watson, who's going to share how traditional water management systems offer sophisticated models for adapting to a warming planet. She will be followed by Argentine-born, Miami-based world builder Jimena Caminos, who's going to present her ongoing effort to support marine ecosystems and raise climate awareness through a pioneering underwater sculpture park off Miami Beach. Teddy Cruz and Fonna Foreman will be discussing their long-term collaboration with communities on the San Diego-Tijuana border, developing a more generous and participatory models of urbanism. We will then be sharing a short documentary produced by The World Around, following the work of Diana Blanco Quiroga, a young Amara leader mobilizing her community to restore a lake in Ururu, Bolivia. Then Thai architect Kochakorn Vorakom, who is joining us from Bangkok, will present her firm's work on water-based resilience in Southeast Asia. And then we're going to close the first session with a panel discussion called Design in the Pyrocene, led by our wonderful colleague Zoe Ryan, the director of The Hammer, and she'll be moderating a conversation between Sharon Johnston, Michael Maltzon, and the president of the Native American Land Conservancy, Michael Madrigal. This conversation will explore how architects and designers can collaborate with communities and expand interdisciplinary design frameworks to respond to our evolving environmental reality. So that's what you're going to have in this first session. It will be a ride. I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, I welcome to the stage Julia Watson. Thank you all.
Please welcome to the stage Julia Watson.
Thank you, and welcome. Would you believe me if I said that for thousands of years, design has been humanity's greatest gift to the planet? Or if I said ancestral technology has been the enduring master plan for planetary coexistence, the actual design framework that allowed humanity and the Earth to thrive together. Through that framework, there was a production of clean air, water, soils, food systems, coastal resilience, and really incredible regenerative models of living. Knowledge carried across generations and cultures is not a relic of the past. It is living design intelligence. It teaches how to design in collaboration with nature rather than seeing nature as an enemy. And these systems, they're not memories. They're actually incredibly transformative blueprints for the future that are just now coming into view. So centering and advancing this form of intelligence sits at the core of all of my work. The Gunayala people, who live on a series of islands just like this one off the coast of Panama and Colombia, they describe the ocean as the mother's amniotic fluid, the medium through which all life is formed. When water is harmed, they don't think of it as pollution. They say it's a wound to the womb of Mother Earth herself. And in fact, for most of human history, water was never seen as an extractive resource. It's actually thought about as a friend, an ancestor, kin. Never has it been really thought of as an existential threat. So Western science, it now confirms that water is where life began, but Indigenous knowledge systems and communities, they extend that and they go even further, saying that water itself is alive. And in that space of being alive, it actually holds a form of intelligence unto itself. It remembers, it warns, and it teaches. So 6 years ago, I actually took the stage after my first book was published, Low Tech Designed by Radical Indigenism. It was the inaugural event of the World Around in New York. And at the same time, back home in Australia, Australia's Black Summer was tearing across my country. Those fires, they were stoked by a number of reasons. There was centuries-old bans on pyrotechnology, there was delayed rains, there was seasonal changes, and there was underfunded prevention. But what happened that summer is Australia lost over 20% of its bushland, 25,000 acres of forest. It took with it entire ecosystems, 33 people, and 1 billion animals. But in the midst of that catastrophe, something really incredible happened. The ancestral lands in Australia where fire stick farming had still been practiced, they were actually fine. Fires moved around them. So today, as Australia once again is caught up in wildfires, and we're here in LA in a landscape that is recovering from fire, I'm here with my second book, Low Tech Water, a field guide for technology. And also the launch of a new office, the Low Tech Office for Intercultural Urbanism. This office is a design studio of designers and scientists working together to merge ancestral wisdom and contemporary urbanism. So what began as low tech really was this seminal image that I think is burned into a lot of people's brains. This is an image of the Wakasi people. They grow living bridges from Ficus elastica trees on either side of a river system. And this is an incredible photo by Pete Oxford. But low tech then grew after my talk here at the World Around and after the book was published into, much to my surprise, a global movement. It began to change design discourse and education and practice. But what's interesting that in many ways, as I'm here again, the message from the first book through to the second book, it's kind of remained unchanged. And even thinking about all of that low tech has become, that single question is really clear to me. What knowledge is being ignored, and what intelligence is lying all around us? So as we see fires reshaping landscapes and cities just recovering and reckoning with insurmountable loss, another presence speaks really quietly but persistently. And it's the focus of my new book, Water. Because water remembers what humans forget. I'm going to take you through a series of images that show the sophisticated technologies from communities around the globe and the ways that they are harnessing the energies of water. So this is a community. This is the Amazigh in Tunisia. They create these Rumli agricultural sand islands. This is a landscape that is incredibly salty. It's a lagoon where there's very, very low amounts of fresh water. They manage to capture water and create these landforms out of the lagoon that feed a really lush environment in really harsh conditions. And so this community, like a lot of Indigenous communities, they have learnt to read water just like we read language. So through seasonal return and retreat, triggering this shift from the salt pans that you can see here to really sponge-like aquaculture marshes during the monsoon season that then protects villages that lie behind this system called the Mithache Agor salt pans of the Goans. Through floods that power the metabolics of material decay, the actual rot of material that actually sustains buoyancy for the bioagricultural islands that you can see here, that are made from invasive water hyacinth from the Bhumi Krishak people, or known as the landless people of Bangladesh. Water does not behave randomly. What it's doing is it's signaling. It responds to how we treat soils, forests, land, coastlines. It signals where those relationships have been broken. And in many places around the world, those communities that can actually still read all of those signals, they are being violently displaced, and all of these technologies are being erased. So across the world, long before modern engineering, communities designed with water, not against it. They built landscapes that flooded on purpose. They created food systems that actually rose and fell as the rivers rose and fell with different seasons. Sophisticated technologies resulting from thousands of years of observation. And then through that observation and that reading of water, there were responses, and then there were recalibrations of those systems. And this knowledge didn't come from controlling nature. It came from a coexistence. And what it produced was incredible abundance, often 8 harvests a year, where we would see normally 2 or 1 harvests a year. And it created that abundance not just for the communities, it created that abundance for entire ecosystems, all the different animals that lived in those regions. So up until now, I've really been focusing on systems that exist outside of cities. And I think the greatest challenge that we actually face today, it's not about whether these systems actually work, because they are incredibly sophisticated and we know that they work. We see them on a global scale being created by communities. Our challenge is to really think about whether we're willing to listen to them and let them inform our collective future. Across the globe, cities are built from the same extractive templates, this spatial logic that actually was designed to mirror the efficiency of machines. It was optimized to drain, divert, erase water, literally cutting off the systems that sustain life within our cities. So the question becomes, what if we were actually to design cities that remembered their ancestry? Urbanism that actually worked with seasonal change and fluctuations, and that could take on incredible amounts of uncertainty. Los Angeles, a city built in a basin once organized by wetlands, rivers, and fire. A logic erased, and what happens is it returns as crisis. Wildfires aren't an anomaly in this landscape, just like they're not an anomaly in the landscape that I was brought up in Australia. But wildfires like this, these are a consequence of erasing those systems that actually inform and form the foundation of resilience. So there are other cities like Los Angeles, like this one that were formed in a basin, cities like Mexico, really similar to LA. Before modern development, Mexico City and LA, they were water-rich landscapes. And Mexico City, though, it was modeled on a really different logic, which I'll show you. Here you can see, this is Mexico City pre-conquering. It was a city that was co-evolved to live with water. This is Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. It had a population of 200,000 people and a tribute of 5 million people, a density greater than LA. It worked in harmony with its lakes. What you can see here in this gridded system, this is actually a system of canals, not roads, although they're actually paved with roads now. And the grid that you see across, these are called chinapas. They're raised field agriculture, which would give those 8 harvests a year that would feed the populations of this city. And this was not just agriculture, though. This was a living infrastructure, breathing with the lakes that existed within. What did they do? They purified water. They buffered against floods and droughts. They were a haven for biodiversity. They cooled the city, and they allowed people to transport goods and people around and through the city. So this was an urban system that was adaptive, it was productive, and it worked with those natural cycles of the water that existed around it. So what happened? Well, the conquistadors came. They tried to impose a European template of a city. They drained this. Most of this system collapsed. Today, Mexico City sits struggling. It is sinking, it is flooding, then it's water scarce. That's what happens when the resilience is removed by the removal of technology. And yet, in Mexico City, in the south, and there's a little bit to the east, the Chinapas actually are still there. They're sitting there quietly cleansing about 1/5 to 1/4 of the city's wastewater. So when we talk about the future of cities, I don't want us to just think about technology, new technology. I want us to actually think about and remember, well, what was here hundreds of years ago that actually was dealing with flood, with drought, with urban heat island effect? So over the last 2 decades, this is what I've been documenting. These are the communities that I've been working with across cultures and geographies, not as artifacts, but as innovations. This is what these systems are. So LOTEC celebrates the reawakening of this millennia-old master plan for planetary coexistence. It traces where ancestral infrastructure and contemporary design is converging to produce some of the most resilient, responsive, culturally grounded design today. Transforming urbanism from extractive to regenerative by remembering how to live with water. LOTEC Water documents one of this century's, I think, this decade's definitely, most profound urban projects, Sponge City. It was developed by Kong Jianyu. That is a contemporary expression of LOTEC, where cities that were once built to expel water are actually inviting water back into their landscapes. You looked to ancestral landscapes. He looked at the Chinapas. He modeled his systems of Sponge City on the Chinapas, but also systems like this, the Sunjiatang. He was watching how the farmers shaped their landscapes, creating polders and dikes and canals, trying to figure out, well, what are they doing? They're storing, they're filtering, they're moving water. He created incredible landscapes like this, Sanya Mangrove Park, which was once just a concrete flood zone. Now it's a living estuary in the middle of a city where mangroves filter water and landforms hold flood. This is LOTEC in action, ancestral intelligence, contemporary design, equaling some of the most important urbanism of this century. When cities remember how to live with water, they become resilient, regenerative, and alive again. So to finish, I want to turn to that question that I asked you in the very beginning. Would you believe me if I said that for thousands of years, that design has been humanity's greatest gift to this planet? That ancestral technology has been the enduring master plan that has been the foundation of coexistence between humans and the earth, that designed framework that allowed humanity and the earth to just thrive together. And that ancestral wisdom, it's not a relic of the past, but it's a blueprint for the future. Because standing here now, the question isn't whether we continue to build. We know that's going to happen. It's whether we remember how to build. Whether we design cities that restore or cities that continue to extract. And if design can once again become a planetary act of care. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Jimena Caminos.
Hello, my name is Jimena Caminos. I am the founder and artistic director of The Reefline. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you, Beatrice, for including us in the world around. We love to be here at the Hammer, and I'm very excited to share with you what Reefline is. And thank you, Julia, for that inspiring presentation. So, Reefline is an underwater sculpture park and a hybrid reef offshore Miami Beach. Relating to Julia's presentation, I come from the world of art and cultural placemaking. I've been working on land for a very long time, designing cultural master plans for cities and public art platforms. And when I arrived to Miami, I started to see firsthand what climate change and sea level rise were doing to the city, and eventually my work pivoted to underwater. So that was my personal transformation. So what is Reefline? Reefline is a system, a very complex system of modules which are marine habitats. Reefline was born in Miami Beach because Miami is a mostly man-made island that has gained a lot of land to the sea by sand replenishment projects. And that sand has sunk the reef it smothered the reef heads, the fringe reef. Miami is sitting in the Florida Reef Tract, which is the third largest reef system in the world. So we're guided by 5 pillars. These pillars to us are critical because to us art is our medium. Sometimes in a world so overwhelming with data and facts, it's very difficult to relate and to understand numbers. Sometimes they're just too big or too abstract. Science sometimes is too abstract. So we use the power of the arts to tap into the public sentiment and tell a different story and somehow invite people to fall in love with what's invisible, because sometimes the crisis is not that visible. Like here in LA, everything is on fire, but the coral reefs are on fire too. There is fire underwater, it's just that we can't see it. So cross-disciplinary collaboration is critical to us because we need everyone, all hands on deck. Reefline is engineering, architecture, marine biology, artists, designers, policymakers, cities, nonprofits, everyone. So if one of these practitioners wasn't there, it's like a Swiss clock, the whole system wouldn't work. So why Miami Beach? Miami has all the problems that you can think of. When it rains, water comes out, like your parking garage. We're sitting on porous limestone, and it's a city that at the same time it has the problems, but it's a small city, and it's wealthy enough as to be able to design and support certain needs, which would be difficult for other cities in the world potentially. So this is what Miami looked like back in the day, and as you can see, it had no beach. So the reef that Miami Beach sank with the sand is the only live reef attached to continental platform in the US, and 90% of the Florida Reef Tract right now is lost. So just a fact, more or less, there's $1.8 billion in coastal resiliency yearly in the US, and in South Florida, the return on investment in a way for each kilometer of reef is $10 million a year, because there's coastal protection, but really what happens is that when the reef dies, when the corals, which are the real estate developers they're the first city makers, and you can see their structures from outer space, just like you can see ours, humans. They are the cities of the sea, and when they die, that habitat is lost, and then 25% of marine life is lost. So they're very important. They're a foundational species. So this is our timeline. We've been 6 years in the making. It all started in 2019 when I asked, what is a hybrid reef? And a friend of mine, a marine biologist, showed me that it was like this concrete thing with holes where, I really didn't know much about it. And I asked the second question, which was, could they be art? And he said, well, I don't see why not. So we presented this idea, thinking we were a little crazy, to the Knight Foundation, and we won the Knight Foundation Arts Challenge Award, and that gave us the seed funds to start. And then one day, the mayor of the city of Miami Beach called me and said, Jimena, do you think you could campaign to be part of our cultural bond? Which we did, and 65% of the Miami Beach residents voted yes, to tax themselves to give us a $5 million grant to develop Reefline, which showed us that Miami is a brave city. It's a visioneering city with visioneering leadership, but also they understand what they need. Everyone in Miami, the residents, they know what has been lost. And so does the city. So I knew this was too big for me to do alone. I had previously designed a large-scale cultural district with OMA, and I became very good friends with Shohei Shigematsu. and I really like how OMA thinks. So I invited Shohei to think with me on how could we make Reefline not just an underwater sculpture park, but actually how can we come out of the water to tap into more people, to be an educational platform, to enhance our impact in the community. So we analyzed the Highline, the Underline, which I developed the cultural master plan for the Underline. It's a 10-mile linear park in Miami. And we started bringing Reefline out of the water, but first understanding what the conditions were. So we are in a hurricane city, in a city that has been depleted. When you go underwater where we are at, there's nothing there except one little part of something we call the Neon Reef, which is a pristine part of what was there that it's still really beautiful. So we analyzed all of those conditions and we designed a system of signage on land, signage underwater, and signage on the shore, because we want to also capture all those people that are walking in Miami and show them what a treasure we have down there. So this is where our first deployment happened. We just deployed phase 1. So those 2 little white dots in the north are Concrete Coral by Argentine artist Leandro Ehrlich. And we're moving north, trying to deploy in front of the lifeguard stations. So these little beach houses are very iconic to Miami Beach, but it's also safe. If you go out, we're at a swimmable distance, but still 700 feet. So we're outside the swim buoys. So you have to go with a little bit of care. And we are 20 feet deep, more or less. So the whole strategy is to deploy hybrid reefs along Miami Beach in front of public parks, so we provide access to people. And we call this marine acupuncture because we like the concept of being very chirurgical or acupunctural when it comes to picking the right spots where to deploy these enhanced marine habitats. So phase 1 was Leandro, and then phase 2 and 3 is Heart of Oceanos by Petrox Sesti, and the Miami Reef Star by Carlos Betancourt and Alberto Latorre, the Blue Arts Award, which is an award we recently launched to also invite other artists and other voices from across the world. And this is Concrete Coral, which was actually very challenging to make. Concrete Coral is 22 16-ton each modules that are studded with coral logs that are devices to outplant coral faster. And that's what our permit looks like, and those are all the GPS points. It was very difficult to do. We struggled a lot because we realized that no one hands you a manual on how to make a hybrid reef. And despite having all the best engineers and architects, we had to do it ourselves. We had to create our own method. We had to crack the code. We tried listening to everyone, but then we realized that no, the whole is more than the sum of its parts, and we had to become the envelope. So we project managed our project despite having hired project managers. So that's what a week looked like a month before deployment. Crazy. So we created what we call that critical path, where we manifested our own reality. So this is what it looked like. So we had a lot of challenges. Fabrication was a big one, not just like logistics, because we are working with permits that expire. You're working with, you have to carve out like hurricane seasons. We work with taxpayers' funds. It's not easy. So the whole thing is super complicated. So everything failed. All the fabricators promised they would do the best, the high tech. The high tech didn't work. I wonder what Julia would propose for this reason, because all the high tech in the world failed. And we went like back to school, ground zero. We did like the simplest, like cast concrete, despite we didn't want to do this, but it was the only way to do it. Because we work inside a hybrid reef permit, so that means that weight and stability are critical. So this is what the cars look like outside the water, and this is what they look like when they're being deployed. And this is where we test them in University of Miami in a wave tank simulator that can simulate a Category 5 hurricane, one in a 500-year storm. And this is what they look like. Let me see if this works. Yeah. So this is one of our commercial divers settling a car in the ocean seafloor. That's the umbilical cord with that yellow thing. They talk to the barge above. So these are the real heroes. That this is very difficult and very dangerous. So they place the cars at a perfect. Leandro wanted them to be perfect. There is a wiggle room of 5 inches only of error margin in this deployment. And Leandro was very excited about the actual transformation of the cars because he wanted as much detail as possible because he wanted nature to erase all that detail. And Mother Nature erased the detail with such velocity. Yeah. So right now we're going through this phase, but it's an underwater garden that goes through many phases actually, and it changes. So this is a red algae, but then the hydroids move in and they trim the algae. We've seen, we do surveys, so this is not AI, what you're looking at, it's real. And there was no fish there. So the proof of concept was incredibly successful. Fish are growing by the hundreds. We have like hammer sharks are coming, manta rays are coming. is doing all these studies and fish are growing by the hundreds weekly. So this is Heart of Okeanos, the heart of a blue whale by Petrox Esti. We're deploying this one in, I hope in 2026. And then these are stability analysis. And this is the Miami Reef Star by Carlos and Alberto, and their stability analysis. And then in Alapatan, if you ever come to Miami, I'm excited you come and visit. We have an insane live coral museum where we breed our babies, which are these. These are the Miami native corals. And this purple coral that you see is a purple candelabra. That's Dr. Sylvia Earle actually holding it. And we went down, this is Sylvia planting our first corals, which are brain corals. So we outplanted these with and this is the study. And we decided to go one step up and move away from the art for a second because we need more habitat. So we started creating like a modular scheme for everything we do, which are these sea tiles with OMA that also maximize microhabitat, because what we're doing now is like large habitat, but we also need the microhabitat. So something important is that reefline is so exotic in many ways. It's a little bit like a Jules Verne story. So it really captures the imagination of the children. So right now we're being studied by 10,000 students in South Florida, which really makes us very happy and very proud. And the children just simply, they love it. We have a marine learning center that goes out and floats on top of the reef once a month, and people freely can come and join our scientists and our artists. And to me, going back to Julia's talk, in a city that was built on top of a reef, to be able to deploy something that is actually co-creating with nature gives art that role, because I really do believe that art can heal. And what we're doing is, art is health in a way. What we're doing is tapping into that power, which is a power that Miami Beach has stood up for the arts for a very long time, and putting it at the service of nature. So in a nutshell, that's Reefline. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Teddy Cruz and Fona Forman.
Good afternoon. We are delighted to be here with you. I'm Fona Forman. I'm a political theorist. This is Teddy Cruz. He's an architect, and we're based together at the University of California, San Diego. And we're pleased to share with you our work at the border. So San Diego, Tijuana is a hotspot of global migration. And for us, a microcosm of all of the indignities faced every day by vulnerable people across the world. Our office sits just a few miles away from the child detention centers that will forever stain this period of American history. While the criminalization of immigrants has had a chilling effect on northward movement right now, climate change will inevitably reaccelerate these flows in the years to come. Climate change is a threat multiplier. intensifying poverty and food insecurity, aggravating violence, and detonating displacement in our region. A recent study found that 72% of arriving migrants at our southern border are agricultural workers or somehow in the agricultural sector, and that northward movement tends to accelerate when local growing seasons in Central America are drier. By mid-century, climate change is projected to produce seismic demographic shifts across our planet and here in our border region. What this means is that border cities like Tijuana will feel increasingly squeezed between climate migration pressures from the south and border closure and control from the north. Finding common ground, very literally common ground for nature and people, is the priority in our practice.
So to carry out our work, we have designed a platform that connects our design office at University of California, San Diego with conditions in the field, and have built a network of public spaces on both sides of the border wall called the community stations, in close partnership with border communities in the front lines of the climate and the migration crisis. Think of the stations as a distributed university where we partner with low-income communities on long-term projects, including research, dialogue, cultural production, education, advocacy, migrant housing, public spaces, and climate adaptation. We have shaped, in fact, an alternative form of urban co-development between university and community, where the economic and programmatic power of our public university has become leverage for our community partners to develop their own social housing and public space infrastructure. Architects typically wait for the client and the brief, but in conditions of emergency, we cannot wait. Instead, we co-produce the brief with communities, not as clients, but as co-developers, and summon the bottom-up and top-down resources needed to realize a project in the absence of formal public support. We have built 4 community stations, 2 in San Diego and 2 in Tijuana. Today, we will focus on 1 in Tijuana, which is located in an informal settlement inside a canyon, home to 100,000 people, and a major site of arrival of global migrants. Tijuana's canyons, in fact, collide with the border wall. Then they spill northward into a protected estuary in San Diego, which is now encircled by Homeland Security. We have been working here for many years on the challenges and opportunities of informal urbanization. The informal settlements of Tijuana recycle architectural waste from San Diego to construct emergency housing and infrastructure. We have learned from these incremental building practices as people construct shelter in layers over time. In one case study we documented, a metal frame appeared overnight. In a couple of weeks, recycled materials began to thread the spaces, and soon an informal house emerged. And global maquiladoras surround these informal settlements to extract cheap labor. Over time, we have experimented with factory-made material systems to structurally mediate the recycling of waste. We approached Mecalux, a Spanish maquiladora that produces lightweight shelving materials for global export, and proposed retrofitting its prefab systems into structural supports. We designed, in other words, an ethical loop where global factories invest directly in the informal housing of migrant laborers. Near this factory lies the most polluted south basin of the canyon, where we partnered with Embajadores de Jesus, a religious organization that opened its temple years ago to thousands of Haitian, Central American, and Mexican refugees navigating prolonged asylum processes in the US and Mexico. And we joined forces with them to increase refugee housing capacity. We accelerated production of Mecalux frames and installed them on vernacular post and beam concrete systems. These structural scaffolds are equipped with utilities to anticipate incremental live-work configurations. With these acupunctural supports, we began restitching the slopes, and migrants assembled the shelving systems into housing frames. We healed the topography, creating hydrofiltration channels, gabions, terracing, and water collection systems. Prefab scaffolds are enveloped with lightweight materials, shading and insulation. A food hall has just been completed with a large industrial kitchen that spills into a civic plaza. With our community partners, we are now developing a full-on sanctuary neighborhood, including social services, a school, a farm, economic incubators, and a health clinic. We demonstrate that migrant housing can help restore local habitat and become a catalyst for building a more inclusive city. This site has become the largest refugee shelter along the entire US-Mexico border, averaging 2,000 people during peak times. And this experiment has taught us that migrant shelters can be urban engines for developing the city from below as integrated eco-social systems. And as many border shelters in Tijuana emptied in recent months, ours has remained the most populated. Many families chose to stay rather than return to danger. The shelter, in other words, has become home, a place of belonging. What is distinctive about all of our community stations is that once we design, fund, and build the physical spaces, we also curate coalitions of knowledge to co-produce the programming that activates the spaces. This includes cultural processes that translate lived experiences into public dialogue and increase community capacities. We convene local artists, activists, and neighborhood youth to collaborate with university curators, playwrights, poets, and visual artists, and produce performances that explore urgent issues impacting the community, and are enacted by the residents themselves in community theaters or civic pavilions.
We want to underscore the cultural strategies through which we reimagine possible futures in the border region and shift public perceptions around interdependence. Despite the wall and the ugly political rhetoric designed to divide us, we are a binational ecology of flows and circulations, and our future here is intertwined. Air, water, waste, health, culture, money, hope, love, justice. These things don't stop at walls. Border zones are unrelentingly porous places. So with our partners in the community, we visualize these flows that connect us and expose deep continuities across border zones around the world, right at home and further afield. At the continental scale between the United States and Mexico, we see how the conflicts between nation and nature are reproduced. These are moments when the jurisdictional line collides with natural systems, demonstrating powerfully what dumb 19th century sovereignty looks like when it hits the ground in a complex bioregion like ours. Our Mexus map, MEXUS, then reimagines the continental border zone without the line. It dissolves the border into a bioregion that is shaped by the 8 binational watershed systems that are bisected by the wall. Mexus also exposes other systems and flows across this bioregional territory. Tribal nations, protected lands, croplands, urban crossings, 15 million people, and more. Ultimately, Mexus counters America's wall-building fantasies with more expansive imaginaries of belonging and cooperation beyond the nation-state. Stretching now to the global scale and the end of our talk, the political equator traces an imaginary line across the world between the 30th and 38th parallels north, connecting some of the planet's most contested and violent thresholds. The US-Mexico border at San Diego, Tijuana, Fortress Europe across the Mediterranean, the Israeli-Palestinian border, India, Kashmir, North and South Korea, you can't see it here, but the accelerating militarization of the South China Sea. Now, visualizing this political equator in red with the climatic equator below in green was an astonishing discovery for us, because the ribbon in between them, give or take a few degrees, contains our world sites of greatest political instability, climate vulnerability, and human displacement. The point for us has always been that these dynamics hit the ground somewhere and are experienced by people locally in everyday places. And this is the scale in which collective agency and resilience take root. As political violence against immigrants turns American neighborhoods right now into war zones, our community stations manifest an alternative coalition of care, spaces of social organization and mutual protection. We close with the words of our dear friend, the late Mike Davis, no stranger to Los Angeles. And this is what he said: "What keeps us going ultimately is our love for each other and our refusal to bow our heads to accept the verdict, however all-powerful it seems. It's what ordinary people have to do, to love each other and defend each other." Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Kochakorn Oraghom.
Whoa. สวัสดีค่ะ Wow, such a very powerful action, and really come to the words transformation. And thank you for having me here, both Beatrice and it's so honored to be here from far, from Bangkok, Thailand. Anyone have been to Thailand? Everyone, yes. So this is not about mango sticky rice and Thai massage and all these things. So this is a different transformation. And in Thai, transformation means การเปลี่ยนแปลง, right? And sometimes it can feel so small. And sometimes it can feel like big and heavy, like what are we gonna do next? But transformation, from my understanding, is never a noun. It's always a verb. Because we, you, me, I, always in transformations. Every minute, every breath we take, all the cells in our body is shifting and renewing all the time. So in Thai, and 99% of Thai are Buddhist, yes. I'm not a perfect one, but for me, transformation in Buddhism means impermanence. We are always living in the process of transformation and impermanence, because we cannot grab everything. It just continues and continues. It's like our body, it's like our land. This is Bangkok, and this is the transformation of water and sediment and everything that coming to deposit, slow down, the water slowing down and create the land. Bangkok used to be sea, but now this is what we look like. We are flat, like not like LA, like flat, no mountain. So this is Gulf of Thailand, and this is Bangkok. And in our utopian landscape, of course, we have city, we have water, we have mountain. But within 100 years, this is my mountain. What does it mean? It means concrete is the second most human transformed material on Earth. This is not nature, this is man-made transformation. And that's equivalent 37 to 39 global energy relating to carbon emission. So we move mountains. And if you put that cement company all around the world, and we are part of that too, right? Built environment, it's gonna be the third emitter country after China and US. What is the most transformed material on Earth? Oh, sorry, concrete was the second. Sorry. What is the first one? Water. Very basic. Bangkok is a 3 water cities. It's actually from flooding, from river. And this is how we transform it. And this is a floodplain. It's nothing wrong. It's just where we situate our urban infrastructure and urban settlement. And this is the flooding in Bangkok. And this is how we become very resilient and innovation. Can be called low tech? Yes, and sometimes this is not only us in the city, it is many other friends. The second order is sea level rise. And this is 25 years from now, and this is the reality at the moment. So it's getting worse each day. And this is used to be land. This is how I have to travel 30 minutes to get to Bangkok. That was land before. So we are sinking with the rain, 15 minutes, the cities just look like that. This is very close to my house. And this is the rain record in 5 years ago. This is predicting from IPCC report in the next 25 years. So we're going to increase 30% more rain in the city of Bangkok. And the regulation of this country, anything past 60 millimeters, you can get approved for getting built. So we rely, the whole 15 million people, on this infrastructure. And I think this is also true, maybe for your city as well. So I think we're at the point that we either adapt or we die. Yes. No more mango sticky rice. So, transform. So I think the recent video is just give me a lot of hope. And what I have done with my team, with my friends, transform the flatland. Last 7 years ago, we won a competition. This is the park, the first one in 30 years of city of Bangkok. How old are you 30 years ago? Maybe not exist. So this is the first park in 30 years for Bangkok, and it's a flat land, so incline the whole park to collect every rain. And we put architecture, we put everything that we can, but we still have 100% park. So this park was done, right now it's 7 years old. And just the incline of the park is not about only to collect the water, but it's also to collect people. This is the first slope park in my city. So the next one, we also transform the concrete mound. And this is the biggest urban farming rooftop in Asia. What's supposed to be creating more urban heat, leftover space, hidden infrastructure, it's become the place that how we used to be friends with how we used to live in the mountainous areas like rice terraces. So it slowed down to in the town runoff, collected renewable energy, public space, much needed. And younger generation knows where the rice come from. So turning this problem into the solution that everyone can take part on, and it's a leftover like million of square meters left unused in the city. How can we do something, transform those things? Transform the waterways. Venice of the East. This is Bangkok, used to be called Venice of the East. And I just know from my other Indonesian friend and Manila friend that you guys been there, no, not you guys, but maybe your ancestor been there, and then also call them Venice of the East too. so in Southeast Asia, there's so many canals, and it's like part of life. It's refrigerator, this is road, this is food, this is leisure, this is everything. But this is now. 1,600 canals in my city. It looks like this. And yeah, and this is yes, correct. Please involve this transformation. And this is the most expensive intersection in my hometown. And now it's turning like this. We don't have a lot of space. This is the problem of Bangkok. So now that section of the canal connect to the urban connectivities and then be part of the canal life. This is how, as a landscape architect, I put people closer to the canals. Using outdoor plants that's supposed to be there instead of concrete. And we also transform waste infrastructure. This is the things that have left unused for 40 years and now become a connectivities to the green and how people went and count down. The drops of rain from the sky to the ocean sounds very simple, right? But in my city, in my country, you have to go to 50 plus departments. And they all have different meanings of water. So every time the floods arrive, how many phone calls you need to call to fix this problem? And will they agree with you that what they should do? So I think the real transformation is not just us here, but it's the government. But wait a minute. Do any of the government building in your country look like this? Or this? Or this? And this is what they call landscape architecture. Plant something beautiful, red, green, whatsoever, but this is cute, this is beautiful. And I just found one in Dallas. And this is my version. We speak different language, there's no social media back then, but why government always have to look alike? So this is a campus, 20 years old campus in Bangkok that 50 department of government, and you can see our Pentagon with the star. That looks strong. Militaries there, like Supreme Court. So what can we do? And this is how we travel and commute to see government, to get married, to renew visa, and to get everything. And 40,000 people per day is using that campus. And this is how we get to see our government, and this is the real experience. No parking space, and no one give up, right? So I'm not sure about what really government want to make us feel so small, unreachable. So I have a good chance to work with them, and last year was the SkyTrain station arrived. So I say, oh, this is the good time for transformation. And the first thing is to get the whole people to the SkyTrain. This is our design for the seamless connectivities. So now 40,000 people have a choice to come to the government by their feet. And from that line, sounds very simple, you're now exposed to this building, the most ugliest building in the campus, hidden in this parking space. And you cannot touch it so much because it's like a property, the asset of the government, right? So we say, okay, we turn it into welcome space. So this is on top of that structure, redesign and adapt, so people will be welcomed by the people by feet. And government allowed to have curve. Yes. Yes, please. Why government need to look so formal, like grid and lines? And this is the first time that I think my government allowed to have curves. And green. And this is how we design our facade to slow down the runoff for the parking garage, making that building look sponge on top, whatever government pitch to other people. They're supposed to be the first one who do it and show us. So urban farming with solar roof. And this is not government, but I just want to shift the meaning of goal. Goal in my culture, in our architecture language, is very prestigious. It's really expensive. It's really high. It's unreachable. Even our newest parliament, big parliament, still put the goal on top. But for this time, I put it in the drainage. For the water, for the rain. And this is how the goal move with the people, with the nature. And every golden pipe is a rain pipe. The rest is structure. We just have to celebrate water. And this is one part. For that, I go quick. This is another one. Different buildings, look similar. Not in Dallas, in Bangkok. So this is like a big shallow pond. It's very reflective pond that all government buildings love to have. But this one is 5.5 acres. It's huge. And on top of the parking space. And this is the aesthetic back then in 20 years. Not that it's not pretty, but this is what is left to be maintenance every year. Our tax go to this pond. Yes. And then they emptied it out. So from that, we convinced that why don't we shift it into people's space? Make the government more reachable, more accessible, and still circulate the water and cool down the surrounding of the building temperature, which is normally you can get this number of temperature with the green and the water. You actually can cooler from plus 20 Celsius to -6. So it's a huge gap, yes, for the greenery. So from this building, it's actually connected to another building. So 10,000 people work on both buildings, but they never talk. They never walk together. Can you remember this wildlife corridor? I think we need for the government. That's why we do this. This is the version of the wildlife corridor that connect that two buildings and then underpass the road. This is not AI, this is real, just opened 2 months ago. So this is a wildlife corridor. I really mean it. Yeah, so people can walk together, right? Walk and talk and then really work together as a nation. And that concrete has been given to people, feet, once again. This is very not normal to see this picture. And every time when people connect, we give them gold. I think they deserve to have the highest value of design. And from the street, systems from these very beautiful flowers that do nothing, just flowering. We turn it into a biodiversity corridor for people there, for government officer there to also be part of the nature. So from 14 acres decorative landscape into 55 acres, so 4 times more green space. From 5-year return period, this can add more absorbing like sponge city to the government. And the temperature is cooling down. Transforms. Without time, there's no transformation because transformation needs direction. And time gives direction and it's only forward. You cannot reverse whatever you have done. Moment. Moment gives the measurement to transformation, right? So without moment, you don't have transformation that continues. And without transformation, time is meaningless. In my Buddhist belief, we believe we are part of nature. We have no God, but maybe our nature is your God, but we have no God. So, but we have I, because transforms is always the verb. They need someone to do something to transform it. But if you have an I, but Buddhism says there's no self, non-self. We shouldn't use our big ego in whatever transformation. So I hope what we do and with all the work that I have shared with the youth, the climate youth, that they just do small things, but it's so much meaningful. We choose the right things. We not only choose things that only benefit us as a city or as a human. We not only choose things because it's more convenient. We need more land for amount of people. And I think we choose this from this to really understand what this flow means. And I often show to my community this picture when all these contagious solutions arrive in the city. And without even design education, they would say, no, we don't want this, to protect them from flooding. And do you know this picture coming from? New Orleans. Yes, we don't want to be like you. Yes. So this is serious, and I think we thought this is solution. This is transformation, but it's not, because with time you cannot reverse, and this thing will stay with them for generation. Anyone know this? This is another machine that's sucking the carbon for you, for us, from like a tree. This is how we always see nature in numbers. Carbon emission, but we never see nature as we are part of nature. And I hope this is not solution that many that were used to colonize the developing world once again. We are not just self that undergo transformation, but I hope we all know that we are transformation. And for that, I hope every time as a built environment designers here, if you have chance to make any transform, you choose something that for future, not only for us today. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Michael Maltzahn, Sharon Johnson, Michael Madrigal with Zoe Ryan in conversation, Design in the Pyrocene.
Wow, wow, wow. This afternoon so far has been so inspiring, and I feel in many ways that this panel is going to really build off of so many of the conversations that we've been learning about today. I am very honoured to be here with three fantastic panelists. Again, for those that might not have been here at the beginning, I'm Zoe Ryan. I'm the director here at the Hammer, and with me, directly to my right is Michael Madrigal, who is the president of the Native American Land Conservancy. Welcome, Michael. Sharon Johnston, founder of Johnston Mark Lee, and Michael Maltzan, founder of Michael Maltzan Architecture. And as many of you know, Michael was responsible for the 25-year transformation of this building that we are sitting in. So we've heard so many inspiring presentations, and it was particularly inspiring to be on the Young Climate Prize jury and to then see Diana's video, which was simply extraordinary. And kudos to the two Beatrices for putting this together. I'd like to bring our focus back in this panel to our hometown of Los Angeles. A region that for thousands of years has been shaped by naturally occurring fire as part of its ecological cycles. And I started at the Hammer last year, and day 2 was when the fires started. And I started to learn a lot about what it means to live in a place that's continuously in relationship with fire. And obviously how devastating on the one hand that can be, but what are the possibilities inherent in that for us to think quite differently? And I think our panelists are going to have some good thoughts on that today. I think it's been very interesting to see how the conversation has been framed by the speakers today, and I thought what would be helpful for us here is to start with a general question for the panelists, but really in 2 parts, to really set the stage about your own relationships to landscape in Los Angeles, and how your understanding of fire has really evolved over time, whether that's culturally or ecologically or professionally. And then we talked a little bit about this when we were prepping for this panel, but in what ways that evolution has really informed your own work, but also your sense of responsibility in that work. And I thought it would be good to have Michael Madrigal speak first to really lay the ground for the conversation today in terms of how we build capacity. I'm using your words from when we spoke, how we build capacity for a more integrated and stronger relationship between humans, communities, and places. So I'd love to hear more from you, Michael.
Ochama, miahwen umenemem neneteo Mike Madrigal nemahe kawianga. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Madrigal, and I am a citizen of the Cahuilla Band of Indians. The Cahuilla people live about 50 miles to the east of Los Angeles and then farther out until the Colorado River near the state of Arizona. And I first, of course, want to acknowledge the people of Los Angeles, the Tongva Gabrielino, and all of their relatives for hosting us today, letting us have this meeting and discussion in their homelands. And this is, I think, a good way for me to begin because as a Cahuilla person, our relationship to a place is centered in our understanding that we're all connected, that human people are relatives to everyone else in this world. And so the land, the water, the fire, the elements, they're all part of our communities. And so growing up, I was aware that fire was one of my relatives. Growing up, I understand that fire has a central place in our lives, giving warmth and light, providing transformation, being at the center of home life and ceremonies. And fire then for me, of course, As a child, we learn that we have to be very careful and respectful of fire because it can transform us in ways that we don't want to be transformed. We need to also understand that fire is an expression of energy that exists within all of us and throughout this universe. That goes back to our understanding as Cahuilla people that our world is filled with energy. So it comes back to cosmology and our worldviews that help us to understand that we're part of an existence that is an exchange and flow of energies. And as Cahuilla people, we talk about this potential or energy as Iva'a, and Iva'a exists within us and around us in all of creation, and that we need to be mindful and aware of this process and therefore conduct our lives in a way that is in tune with and respectful of all of these flows of energy. So again, that comes back to our theme of transformation. It comes back to our earlier themes of traditional ecological knowledges, which peoples have, I believe, had to come to, or it's something that exists within indigenous communities throughout the world. And in today's more modern, expressions of life, we've begun to forget those things or lost track of them. And we need to then turn back, I think, and remember. And we need to understand that this process of transformation needs to happen in collaboration and in proper respect and union with all of those forces around us, including fire and water. I think that that's what needs to be kept in mind when we're building communities and building structures, creating spaces for people to live in, understanding that people are not just our human family, but people include the plants, the animals, the elements, and the energies.
Thank you, Michael, for your generosity and explaining how we might bring together old and new knowledge as one. I think it was one of the things that, there's many threads. The Hammer sort of prides itself on being this incredible gathering place and the kind of town square where we, really want to bring, different people together and through the lens of art or architecture and design, be able to come together and discuss things, sometimes even things where we have very different points of view. And I think one of the things that we talked a lot about was a much stronger interrelated relationship between humans, communities, and places. Sharon, given your own work, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and your perspectives, especially as a practitioner in LA.
Great, thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Michael, for that lovely sort of setting of the table of the sort of long arc of interrelation of all the issues we're talking about today. Maybe just to start by saying that I grew up in Southern California along the coast here. And so I think for me and my family, the cycles of fire and the following rainstorms that would always mean mudslides and other kinds of risks were, made the sort of rituals of our seasonal cycle in our family were really about taking care of our house. I mean, there was always sort of danger to prepare for, whether it was watering the roof for the fire or preparing sandbags for the floods. So somehow this idea of caring for the home is something that was part of my upbringing. And I think, later as I pursued architecture, I feel and reflect today that somehow the fragility really of the Southern California landscape defines for me a sort of sense of space, the ephemerality of things that we build. I think you talk, Michael, about your culture is somehow this idea of time and change is inherent to how you see the land, and I think that was a really important sort of legacy for me growing up here. And I think for Michael and I both as practitioners working in Southern California, I think California is a state that is highly regulated in terms of the building codes that govern how we think about making architecture, from, the earthquakes that require beefy structure to resist seismic. The climate, we have some of the most strict climate codes that allow us to, or require that we make very tight envelopes for our buildings to lessen our reliance on energy. And then lastly, I think, of course, fire, that we increasingly have to harden the structures that we build. We think about new materials that can resist ember intrusion. We need to fire sprinkler our homes. The first thing we do when we're designing buildings of all type is thinking about how can the fire department get to this building. I mean, that's the first thing you think about. We often have to add fire hydrants to individual projects to ease access. And I think what is so important as we reflect on all the changes and how we are required to build today, it starts with what we call defensible land, strategies to protect the space around a building. It started at 30 feet, it's expanded to 100 feet. Then we realized that that wasn't enough, that we had to start thinking about the envelopes that we're building. And I think today where we are, I mean, the magnitude of the fires in Altadena and the Palisades were such that we realized everything that each one of us can do as an individual is not enough, because once the fire gets close to your structure, it's too late. And I think, I love the idea of the conversation that we can, as we think to the future and think of a new kind of collective, the interdependence of, state land, the sort of greater territory of our region in relationship to what we do as individuals, as builders, as people that manage land. I think that's where I see that our future has to be. And I think we've touched on the role of government, and I think that's something that, we really need to be coming to the table and bringing so many voices to think about how that can actually be looking forward in California.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember when we were speaking before, Michael, I think it was you that was explaining how we think about fire and land these days, right? Typically, especially our concept of land is about real estate and ownership and property, insurance. I'm hearing a lot about insurance as I've been here, whether we have it, whether we don't have it, whether we can get it, and just the insane cost of some of that. So I'd love to hear, Michael, you talk more about your own thoughts on this and the responsibility of architects, especially.
Well, I think that's true. That much of these fires were, in many ways, I think, different than a lot of the fires that I feel like I've watched over the years. If you've lived in Los Angeles or in the region long enough, you've absolutely seen the spectacle of fire, and it's almost a kind of media event. You watch it on television. It seems somewhat remote, even if some people are being affected, the land's being affected, flora and fauna are being affected, but somehow it always seems like it's a kind of distant idea that we just have grown accustomed to living with. These fires, especially for me in Altadena, where we live very close to, it really transformed, I think, maybe even obliterated the idea of a lot of our preconceptions of fire. We've grown up with this idea of fire being in the conflict between the wild land and urban interface. But if you look at a place like Altadena, that fire was largely an urban fire. It's a very different idea than we've become accustomed with or accustomed to. 16,000 structures burned across the city, 30 people plus perished in the fire. Complete communities transformed and dispersed out of those areas. I think it really is a radical change in our the way that we have to confront the realities of fire in the future, especially with climate-borne change. I think as an architect, I'm kind of obsessed by lines and boundaries, and those lines and boundaries include things like inside-outside, between wealthy and poor in cities, between ethnicities in cities, in the way that highways and infrastructure carve up and crisscross the city and separate different communities from each other. But the thing that these fires demonstrated was that those lines are really, in many ways, fictional. They're ideas that have grown up and persisted in our minds about the way that the city is structured, and yet they are ephemeral. In the Altadena fires and the Pacific Palisades fires, largely evaporated. They disappeared in all sorts of ways. And I think that really is a deep tragedy in its realities, but it's also the place, the space where architects, designers have a responsibility to step into, because it's one of the few moments when something that has a scale to affect the entire city becomes an opportunity to rethink how we might live or build the future of the city as we go forward.
It's so interesting that you talked about the highways, because I remember that first week when I was here, and we were doing evacuation plans for people and potentially artwork, and I remember the conversations of people saying, if the fire jumps over whatever highway we were talking about at that point I didn't even know quite where I was in the city, so let alone where the highways were. But it was just such a frightening and helpless situation that I felt like we were in. And so much of it was experienced for many of us, like you said, on the TV, like watching it on the news, on our phones, but not experiencing it firsthand, which I think obviously so many others in LA did. And I wonder then, Michael Madrigal, we talked about, as climate change intensifies wildfire risk, a lot of the work that you've been doing is really, I feel like, gearing us, up potentially to be more resilient, more caring, but also more cautious in what we're learning or what we're taking for granted, and how traditional ecological knowledge and indigenous governance, as you work on, both offer a path to climate adaptation. And I'm wondering, what in your mind is some of the most important things that architects and designers can learn from indigenous fire management practices and forms of governance?
Yes, so I'm going to reference a little bit of the work of the Native American Land Conservancy, which we are now stewarding 7 areas of land in California. And in that work, it requires us to first respect our relationship to the place and the land, and to understand all of what's going on in this place, the plants, the animals, the ecology, the movement of water, and so all of these things have to be understood. And so, in our land conservancy, then we have our elders who have the ecological knowledge, which is gained through generations of experience on the land. And we also partner with land scientists and conservation scientists. And putting that all together, then we can find ways to live respectfully and hopefully thrive in a place. So I would recommend or suggest that it's everyone's responsibility to take a moment and actually reorient how we're experiencing our lives in a particular place, our workplace, our living place, and understand what is the deeper history of this place, how have people cared for and stewarded the place. And so here in Los Angeles, we then ask for the wisdom of the Tongva community. We look towards the traditional ecological practices of this place, which include fire on the land. So there's good fire that is able to renew and refresh the landscape. It's supportive of the plant and animal species, and then therefore creates a better habitat for us as human beings as well. So I would recommend looking at that. I would also recommend, of course, growing a relationship with the people, the original peoples of a place, to better understand I guess you can say, the life of this place. And so, of course, we all have our own type of relationship with place. So you begin there, but I think whenever we're doing something on a community scale, it's very important to build relationships with the original peoples of those places, because those are key inputs to make any type of decisions for design and architecture and planning.
A quick follow-up to that: do you see, in your experience, government agencies like fire agencies coming together with the with tribal knowledge bearers to work together and share their knowledge?
Yes, so this is an amazing transformation that has been happening in the last 15 to 25 years here in California in particular, where the fire managers and the public lands managers and hopefully also, city and other local governments are coming into dialogue with the native communities, so that the people who have stewarded and cared for the land for thousands of years can participate in this process of the continuing, care and use of land where we're all living. And so, for example, the Native Land Conservancy, we're working with multiple state agencies. We work with local governmental agencies and then tribal governments. And the Native American Land Conservancy is a nonprofit organization. We're not a tribal government, but we work to support tribal communities and to reconnect the native peoples with our traditional homelands, and then help support a healthy landscape wherever it happens to be, on the Indian reservations or off of the Indian reservations. As we were saying, those boundaries, they're real in political and social ways, but they're not usually real in the natural systems. So our natural systems are flowing and transforming continually, and jurisdictions and borders don't stop that. That's why all the jurisdictions and governments need to work together.
Thanks, Michael. Sharon, Johnston Motley is one of the 10 firms that in Los Angeles that are working on what's called Case Study Adapt, which is sort of, I guess, some sort of reviving the original 1945 case study program that was here in Los Angeles, but now in response to the fires. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about that initiative, how you got it involved, and has this project really enabled you to understand or potentially reconsider your own relationship to both LA now, but also historically?
Great, thanks, Zoe. Yes, Case Study Adapt is a program that was initiated. Leo Siegel is here, along with some other colleagues, and Architectural Digest is also a partner. And I think it really came from, the sort of immensity of loss around the fire in January. Seemed like it was at a scale that it might be an opportunity to bring a group of architects together and maybe rethink how, maybe looking back to the original case study program, what might be some principles that we could develop with a set of clients, but could be thought of as a set of design principles or even guidelines that might be made available to a wider community of folks. And I think it's interesting to look back at the case study program. It was initiated by the Art and Architecture magazine, and it was really emerged as a post-war program. It was a time of a lot of optimism and sort of new frontier of Southern California. There was a lot of new technology that was part of how these houses were designed and integrated, different kinds of systems of working with metal, a sort of kit of parts experimentation. And I think, of course, case study ADAPT in 2025 is born of a very different, not necessarily a time of at least immediate optimism, but a real crisis. People had lost their homes. And the program, Leo and Justin helped match families that talked about their family's history on these particular parcels, and then they helped match us with these families. So I think, we've talked a lot about time in different ways across the panel so far, and what was quite beautiful, I think all the families have some deep connection to the place in the house that they lost. In our case, our client's father had owned the land, she was living there now, and she had a lot of plans to pass it on to her daughter and her family. So I think for us, the principles of the project were loose, but of course, climate resilience was a key part of it. And to try to think about, back to the conversation that we've been having a little bit about, so much of Southern California today is about real estate. How do you build as big as possible, get the most return on your investment? People often don't hold on to land or buildings as long as maybe they used to. And so thinking about building smaller, building in a resilient way, and I think for us, thinking about building for intergenerational living. So we tried to think a lot about honoring the principles of the case study program, to think about working with a kit of parts, working in a kind of modular way, such that the spaces, the gardens that the house was designed to live inside and out, which is more challenging today than it used to be because of fire hardening. But trying to think about the house and the site, which was quite modest in our case, is more of a kind of living landscape. So you didn't talk about how many bedrooms and kitchens and things, but a collection of really beautiful rooms that could evolve as our client's family evolved. And I think that I think the question of adaptability is something that we confront in all of our projects, whether they're commercial or institutional or residential or to do with landscape. And I feel that's a really critical part of how we need to think about the future of building in Los Angeles, that we can think about getting closer to the land, building less, and thinking about how the structures we build can adapt. Designing for adaptation into the future, I feel, is a really core principle of sort of what we're taking away from the experience so far.
Thanks, Sharon. It's interesting that sort of the collective action is a common thread that runs through all of the conversations. Michael, you mentioned that your office is, a half hour from the foothills communities in Altadena that were deeply affected by the fires. And you're working on a number of projects at kind of multiple scales of responsibility for your firm. Could you speak a little bit about what lessons you think are imperative for the city to take on as it adapts its model of urban planning? And we've talked especially about how do you build back community, right, when it feels like it's been so decimated, and then especially in light of the increasing frequency and intensity of fires.
I was struck when Sharon was talking about the case study program. Those architects, the architects in the current cohort, but also the architects in that original cohort, I think thought about a deep responsibility in terms of how they could use architecture to provoke and provide new models for living that were contemporary with a lot of the issues that culture was facing at that time. You mentioned real estate before, and I think we've come to think of a lot of those case study houses as mid-century modernism. It's a kind of aestheticization of really what was an idea set, such a profound idea that architecture could have a transformative effect on the most basic thing in our lives, how we live and how we live together. I think that's really interesting, but it also did something else, and that is that those houses provided a kind of proof of concept. I think as a culture, as a people, as human beings, we're deeply suspicious of anything new. We won't really accept that we could do something in a different way until we see it in some sort of form, some precedent of it. And I think that's one of the things that the case study program did. That's one of the things I'm looking for now is how do you produce a kind of proof of concept, no matter what scale it is, so that you can point to it and say, we can actually transform the situation. There's a lot of work around houses right now, of course, tens of, thousands of people out of their homes. A lot of that is looking at those questions from a more technical and pragmatic level. How do you harden the houses? How do you make them more resistant? How do you make them more sustainable into the future? We've zoomed out some in a part of our work and to look at how you might be able to help foster community. Because when everybody moves back eventually, it needs to be more than a collection of a group of individual houses. There's a real question of how a community is made. In Altadena, we're working on a project, which may be the hardest project I'll ever work on, or am working on, where we're taking a block. We have this idea that one block in Altadena is at the scale that it can be thought of as a kind of microcosm of the city. It can be repeatable. It's big enough, though, that it's really at a more community scale. And on that block, we're working with the LA County Development Corporation, which is independent from the county, but a sub-agency of the county, to restore some buildings on the site that rehabilitate them, that made it through the fires, not so well, but made it through the fires. Most of it was affordable senior housing. To that, we're adding additional affordable senior housing, and then adding an expanded nursery school, with the idea that it really becomes, at its core, a kind of intergenerational village, that you touch the youngest and the oldest in the community as a way of really connecting or establishing both the future and a lot of the history on the site. To that, we are proposing a food bank. There's a lot of food poverty in the area. We are looking at rehabilitating 2 water tanks from one of the private water companies that were burned and really aren't able to be used as these new wellness facilities that have basketball court, exercise spaces, pickleball courts on the roof with views of the mountain. And then also looking at the possibility of adding artist studios, because many artists lost their studios in the community. It's the biggest challenge with that project is its complexity. We live in a culture, we live in a place that has largely separated complexity out. Houses are over here, commercial zones are over here, schools are over here. This is trying to reintegrate or intertwine those different complex parts of our lives into one village. The challenge is that it really goes against the grain of thinking, especially in government. And so that's one of the things we're having to do more than the design of the project. It's really the design of the process to get everybody at the table. I was thinking when Michael was talking about bringing together all of the different agencies, I was going to get them after the meeting. How are you doing that? Because that's really one of our biggest questions.
I think the bringing together of the technical and the cultural approach to stewardship of land has sort of been also a thread through all of our conversations. So I thank the three of you. We could talk for days on such an exciting topic, but I know that Beatrice is here. Oh, sorry. We could talk for days about this topic, but I was saying really bringing back the technical and the cultural approach to stewardship of land is, I think, such an important thread of the entire day today. So thank you three. And I know that Beatrice is here. And we aren't taking questions, but I'm sure the panelists will be here if you have an inspired question from them during the break.
Please welcome to the stage Beatriz Galili.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back from the break. We are very, very excited for session 2 after a very invigorating and inspiring session 1. I will also just do a little bit of housekeeping to say that we also have a drinks gathering at the end. So right at the end of this, you'll get a chance to meet some of the speakers, and I know many of you have questions for them. So that will be an opportunity for all of us to get together. So please do stay until the end. We're going to begin this session with a tribute to an architect whose work has profoundly shaped the city we're in. Frank Gehry passed away aged 96 last December, and the appreciation of Frank's work and his contribution will come from longtime collaborator and head of modern art at Los Angeles County Museum of Art, Stephanie Barron. Then, through the speculative world of film and video game, The Alluvials, artist Alice Bucknell will explore the politics of water and the more than human impacts of the climate crisis in near-future version of Los Angeles. Then, drawing on 3 of his firm's recent and current landscape projects, including the overhaul of New York City Lincoln Center Plaza, Walter Hood will speak to the role of public space in repairing and revitalizing the social fabric of American cities. In the second episode of Young Climate Stories, which was the film that you all saw earlier today, A Garden in the Desert will introduce Swahili refugee and farmer Mohammed Salam Muhammad Ali, who will address the food insecurity and water scarcity with a water-efficient garden he's created in Algeria. And for those of you, I know some of you were curious about Diana, who you saw earlier. She's the winner of our Young Climate Prize, and you can explore more about that project on our website. It's a mentorship program that the World Around runs, connecting young people under 25 with mentors in the architecture and design community. So finally, running up to finally, penultimately, we will have Kulapat Yantrasat, the architect renowned for envisioning the contemporary art gallery in cities around the world, will present for the first time his firm's latest cultural landmark in Thailand, Dib Bangkok. And then to end the session and the whole program, architect and industrial designer Patricia Archiola will join Fondation Cartier's Beatrice Grenier to discuss how change appears both as a generative stimulus and an essential characteristic of her design across 4 of her most recent exhibitions. And I'd like to take the opportunity again to thank Beatrice Grenier, my co-curator, and the global cultural partner Fondation Cartier pour l'Art Contemporain, and the Hammer Museum, who are our presenting partners today. Thank you both so much for making this program possible. We're thrilled to be here, and welcome to our first speaker. Thank you all so much.
Please welcome to the stage Stephanie Barron.
Good afternoon. I was asked to say a few words about my dear friend Frank, and I am really delighted to do that. Frank was my first friend in Los Angeles. I met him at a party in New York a few days before I flew to Los Angeles to start my job at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art in January 1976. Frank asked me, "If you don't know anyone in town, can I take you to dinner on Sunday?" And thus began our friendship and a working relationship that has spanned most of my career at LACMA. Frank soon introduced me to his close group of artist friends in Venice, And he would continue these friendships with those guys and with artists like Ed Ruscha, John Baldessari, and David Hockney, and a younger generation like Charlie Ray and Kathy Opie. Frank always showed up for the openings of his friends' exhibitions. He was tremendously loyal. Frank designed occasional exhibitions at LACMA in the 1960s of Japanese art and a pretty radical one for his friend Billy L. Bengston's show in 1968. But after winning countless international awards and being recognized for his art museums, concert halls, and buildings on university campuses, and many commercial and residential successes, Frank certainly didn't need the job of designing exhibitions at LACMA. And it wasn't for the pay. But he was always there for me. He helped me solve problems. He made my shows better. He always wanted to know, what did the art need? What did it want to convey? What did I want to convey? And for more than 4 decades, we worked together on 8 exhibitions. Frank loved music, classical and jazz. His designs for Disney Hall in LA, the Boulez Saal in Berlin, the Pritzker Pavilion in Chicago, and the New World Center in Miami always put musicians and the acoustics first. He valued audience intimacy, setting a high bar for other concert hall designs. The LA Times music critic wrote of Frank that he did more than any other single individual in the 21st century to benefit music. Disney Hall is, I think, other than his own home, the Gehry building that he spent the most amount of time in. He had a reserved seat, and he was often in the audience. But there's another side to Frank, the person who was always eager to work with a friend or an organization because he believed in them or the goal of the group. In the last 25 years, Frank was generous with his time and resources, supporting projects around education, health, and social equity, often pro bono, and often doing projects even anonymously. His optimism and belief in our city was infectious. He loved LA. Artist Kathy Opie said that her efforts to be a good citizen have been modeled on the example that Frank set. Frank could often be found on weekends on the water in the Santa Monica Bay, helming Foggy, the sailboat he designed, surrounded by family and friends. It was his happy place, and fellow sailors loved seeing him out on the ocean. Frank believed in the transformational power of arts education. Witness the Beckman's Yola Center, the Educational and Performing Center for the LA Philharmonic's Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, turning a nondescript building into an accessible rehearsal and performance space. And the current expansion for the Colburn School across from Disney Hall will add much needed rehearsal and public performance spaces for the next generation of students. The Children's Institute of Watts serves families and children affected by underinvestment and racist policies. Frank said, "When I heard the stories of the people involved, I couldn't help but want to help. I wanted the community to walk in and feel we poured our hearts and souls into the design for them. I hope this building can help facilitate nurturing care and healing." Frank may have taught at some of the most prestigious private universities in the United States, but he also turned his attention to California's most under-resourced public schools. He co-founded Turnaround Arts California, a nonprofit organization committed to bringing high-quality arts education into struggling public schools to improve attendance, engagement, and academic outcomes. One of his most ambitious and complicated projects was the LA River revitalization. In 2013, he was hired to reimagine the 51 miles of the LA River as a civic, ecological, and cultural spine, rather than the concrete flood channel it became following the 1938 disaster. Frank wasn't designing a single building, but rather hoped to reclaim the river, to remove much of the concrete, to create a wildlife corridor and open up park space for neighborhoods and create recreational and cultural and public art zones. It was a daunting undertaking as the river ran through 14 cities and was controlled by LA County and the Army Corps of Engineers. For 5 years, he brought together teams of experts to study the river and the marginalized communities on either side of it. They explored water quality, greenhouse gases, public health and social equity, as well as cultural programming and transportation. Eventually, his efforts focused on a 3-mile length of the river and the effort to create cultural spaces and engage communities with the river. It's hard to think of someone else in LA who could have brought together such a coalition of stakeholders and politicians to address these issues. His efforts reset the conversation around the river as a public realm and established the groundwork for the Cultural Center in Southeast Los Angeles, or CELA. However the river project evolves, Frank's commitment to it and to our city will be at its bedrock. When his 2015 retrospective from the Pompidou traveled to LACMA, I asked Frank if he would design the title wall, and he wrote a letter to Los Angeles, which we reproduced in his handwriting, and I thought it was worth sharing today. Dear Los Angeles, we met many years ago when we were both young and had stars in our eyes and wanted to make a beautiful oasis, a beautiful place. There weren't a lot of rules, there weren't a lot of spotlights, and there weren't a lot of people watching. There was a lot of freedom for a creative person to explore ideas, make things. Anywhere else in the world, I would have had difficulty taking the route that you afforded me. So now we are all grown up and we have a mature group of creative professionals joining us that believe in your uniqueness. Together, we all want to help to address our collective experience and some of the challenges still confronting us. We've been good partners, and we are stronger for it. Let's continue taking care of each other. Frank Gehry. So after Frank died, and I was driving around Los Angeles, I felt a little bit like the spirit of optimism had dimmed a little bit, and that you felt with Frank that anything was possible. We will miss you, my friend.
Please welcome to the stage Alice Bucknell.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. And yeah, a massive, massive thank you as well to the World Around, the Hammer Museum, and Fondation Cartier for conjuring this special day that we get to share with each other. So this is a new talk of mine called Playing Like a Planet. So my name is Alice Bucknell, and I'm an artist, educator, and game designer based here in Los Angeles. And for the last 5 years, I've been making video games, simulation films, and other interactive media projects that are situated at the intersection of speculative ecology, game design, and futures thinking. So, this is a talk, obviously, about video games, and I think in order for us to get to the legwork of where games are now and where they're going in the future, thinking about games as these kind of expansive, immersive world engines where we can kind of playtest and imagine new forms of being together, that does involve us taking a slight detour back in time. So let's go back, let's say, 20 years. A couple decades ago, culture critics were stomping their feet and declaring that video games weren't art. At around that time, I was a preteen in Florida, booting up my first personal computer. And I was playing a lot of Second Life. Second Life, for those of you who don't know, was one of the first truly multi-massive player online games. Here, I would spend long nights in the company of strangers, building elaborate shared universes. It was also here where I started to understand the vast social, political, existential, ecological salience of virtual worlds. Fast forward to today, 2026, and thankfully, our video games art debate has been left well in the dust. In fact, the influence of video games on all sides of the equation is difficult to overstate. Forecast as a $400 billion industry in 2026, this figure has ballooned since pre-COVID times, when video games were grossing just a sixth of that revenue. I guess it turns out that being stuck at home for years on end during the pandemic feels a lot like being a pre-teenager, in that people got very, very into video games. But for me, it goes so much deeper than that. It goes so much deeper than the terminal boredom, financial forecasting, and the weird logics of pandemic time. In both video games, quality and content, their positionality and the stakes they raise, video games are proving a uniquely capable medium for tackling the seismic shifts our world is currently undergoing, from the individual to the planetary. In fact, I think it's video games' ability to toggle across scales that makes them such powerful engines for navigating complex systems, relationships, and forms of knowledge. And crucially, not just moving through systems, but moving with them. Because to enter a game world is to become an active agent or a player. It means making choices and seeing the impact of those choices in real time. To pull from Octavia Butler's concept of Earthseed, it is to touch the world and to be touched back by it. As a game designer working in the field of ecological futures, I see an immensely powerful and poetic overlap between video games and design thinking. While the worlds we play in are simulated and the embodiment we experience while gaming is virtual, the emotive, psychological, and existential registers that games touch us with are very real. Titles like Firewatch, Norco, and even the latest Death Stranding pull players right into the middle of a series of crises, a mega wildfire, a petrocapitalist take on swamp ecologies, and the global wreckage brought on by American imperialism. On topics spanning anthropogenic climate change, social and political upheaval, and the relentless extraction of capitalism against the very viability of our planet, a kind of gamification narrative if you really think about it, games are particularly adept at dissecting a chaotic system's moving parts. Games help expose loopholes, cracks in the foundation of corrupt systems, and games can even carve out a clearing to playtest, to experiment with alternatives. Alternatives not just for the future, but for the very times that we're living in. So, in 2023, I finally moved to Los Angeles. I pulled the trigger after several years of increasingly longer visits, trips where I could not get the image of that vast, often bone-dry, concrete ribcage of the Los Angeles River out of my mind. Trips where I had hiked burn scars up the canyons sidled against the cantilevered mansions of Malibu. Trips where I had seen all of Joshua Tree's National Park namesake yucca plants bloom under clouds of equally almost extinct but still love-drunk yucca moths. I knew I wanted to make a game about the city and its broader situated ecologies, the paradoxes of multi-species life and weird mythologies that thrive here, despite the human-induced permacrisis of water scarcity. That game ended up being The Alluvials. The Alluvials gets its name from geology and the planetary sciences. It refers to the kind of imprint that a moving body of water leaves upon the terrain that it passes through, which also acts as a kind of fossil record when that river dries up. Both here and not here, layered, deep, geologic time, life-giving and full of lore. It really felt like the perfect metaphor for Los Angeles. And one with no small trace of irony, as water is LA's true object of desire, despite a short-sighted move in the 1930s to channelize its own river in response to a particularly disastrous flood. To encounter a natural, intelligent cycle and break it down into a binary, extreme overflow or extreme drought. Humans are not particularly good at thinking in nonlinear time, planetary time, river time. The cinematic universe of the alluvials was developed during a self-instated residency at the LA Public Library downtown. I'd roll up on the daily, where I was met by the librarians' endless resources of knowledge and enthusiasm. Under their wing, an especially designated trolley of finds that they'd fervently pull off the shelves upon my arrival, I pored over countless documents from primary sources of political deals the city had brokered with other water-heavy states after it turned off its own natural tap. I also explored and was heavily inspired by the unrealized master plan of the Los Angeles River, penned by the Olmsted brothers, the landscape architects behind Central Park. From here, I constructed the scaffolds of LA's water scarcity story, and then I turned toward speculative fiction to fill in the gaps. In the alluvials, one is always in a state of flow, a flow between temporalities, between bodies, between worlds. Players inhabit different characters across different levels, from a trio of wolves roaming a desertified downtown Los Angeles to the aforementioned Joshua Tree and its cosmic partner, the Yucca Moth. Players even get to play as the LA River itself in one level. GameSpace allows players to temporarily inhabit the mind and the body of another being, and in so doing, the false binary between human and non-human life worlds can start to blur. I believe it's in this expanded sense of self and how this openness can follow us back into the world once we put down the controller, that video games reveal their value as a cultural and ecological tool. Now, that being said, the existential plasticity of games really isn't all fun and games. Video games, like a good therapy session, can dredge up all kinds of complex feelings. Here, I take a page from queer game theorists like Aubrey Annabelle and Bo Ruberg, whose concepts of no fun gaming or difficult gaming address the powerful emotional states that can be accessed when winning the game is put to one side, or when failure is moved away from the individual and transposed onto a system. Perhaps such as a system like capitalism that seems to be stuck in a kind of permadeath loop, increasingly crashing out on its own rulebook. Rather than rage quitting or switching the console off in a fury when faced with a seemingly unbeatable boss, difficult games encourage us to slow down, to stay with the trouble of the drama that we've created, and to re-strategize. A different POV can change everything. In the final level of the alluvials, you get to play as Wildfire. The game was made in 2024, but after the Eaton and Palisades fires blazed through Altadena and the neighborhoods surrounding the Santa Monica Mountains in an extreme hydroclimate whiplash event in January 2025, this level of the alluvials really took on an uncanny new dimension. Traversing the Santa Monicas, one moves as fire through the landscape, igniting it while also learning of the history of speculative real estate and legacies of colonization that resulted in controlled burning practices being halted. In the life world of the forest, fires are necessary agents. They clear the canopy, they remove invasive species, and they promote resilience. But to many humans, fires mean one thing: bad. The original stewards of this region, the Gabrielino Tongva people, knew this cycle well. A disembodied voice in the game world suggests. This voice is coming from the fire. It's not quite you, but it's not quite not you either. In the linear progressive march of a present future churned out by capital, we often forget to listen to ecosystemic intelligence. Perhaps wandering games can help us remember. Following the alluvials, I've been increasingly inspired by this notion of playing nature. And when I say that, I don't mean just playing as nature, I mean getting played by it too. Earth Engine is a game I'm currently developing with the support of Creative Capital, and it features a world that is spawned by the planet's own climate data every time it's played. Let's watch a brief demo. In Earth Engine, players wander this real-scale virtual world, which responds to the player's movements, behaviors, and local climate data in real time. The Earth Engine appears rogue-like, sprite almost, in the game's UI, inspired by Tamagotchi, a viral 90s pocket classic that perhaps unsurprisingly was relaunched in 2025. The game was also influenced by another 90s gaming icon, Will Wright's Sim Earth. But instead of letting humans play as small gods in the ultimate planetary scale sandbox, as Wright did, the Earth in Earth Engine controls your fate, not the other way around. Move too quickly and you could trigger a wildfire, a sandstorm, an avalanche. Move too slowly and vast swaths of the world in front of you dissolves, right in front of your eyes, gone forever. Earth Engine is a game about listening, about sensing, about moving with the world. It asks players to become attuned to the language of digital Earth twins, real-time digital models of the planet that are used in both advanced climate modeling and game design. The language that Earth Engine speaks is an unknown language, because it is both a language of the present and a language of the future simultaneously. We listen out for it, and it calls upon us in turn. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Walter Hood.
Good afternoon, everyone. Alice, that was awesome. I want to go play games with you. Okay? Thank you guys for still being here this afternoon. Hopefully I won't bum you out. That was a really exciting piece, but I want to talk a little bit about underdeveloped urban landscapes. And what I mean by underdeveloped urban landscapes, it goes back to Marable, controversial idea that we leave some of these landscapes in our cities underdeveloped for a particular reason. We want the labor. We don't really want people to live great lives. We just want their bodies to build things. And so, like, I live in West Oakland. Every day I see people leaving, going to work, and coming back. And they live in these underdeveloped places. And for years I would go, why won't anyone build in my neighborhood, right? Intentionally, they'll build 2 blocks away, but they won't build in our neighborhood. So we started doing research on this, and so there is a theory that if you let an area be underdeveloped for so long, people will go away. And we actually see that. And we have a long history of that in our country. Today I want to talk about 3 underdeveloped landscapes. One is in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. One's in Miami. We heard about these beautiful beaches in Miami, a place called Overtown. And lastly, a place called Jacksonville, Florida, La Villa, which I had never heard of. And I'm saying La Villa. They don't say it that way. They say La Villa there. So when we talk about redevelopment, as an architect in architectural school and in planning school, we learned that in the 60s and 70s, the urban bulldozer came in and redeveloped all of these brown and black neighborhoods. And it was bad. It erased them. So when we think of Lincoln Center, we see Ike there in the middle. Huge swath of Midtown. They came in and just tore it down. If you've seen West Side Story, that's the story of San Juan Hill from that musical. And you can kind of see the city is still fledging around Central Park, but in this one area, San Juan Hill, where brown and black people lived, it could go away. La Villa in Jacksonville, very different. We learned that after the Emancipation Proclamation, my ancestors, my brothers and sisters got on a train and they could go as far as La Villa. So that's the train station there on the left. But when they went there, look at all those houses. Today, that's what La Villa looks like, right? Underdeveloped. And then Overtown is a very interesting story. I didn't know about Overtown. When blacks came, brown and black people came to Florida, the Coconut Grove, they lived in the trees, they had all this great nature. And slowly, they ended up in between two freeways, right? So it's like, how did this happen? Well, going to school for landscape architecture in this country, I learned of Middleton Place, 1730. They called it Middleton Place. It was a plantation. This is our history of landscape architecture in this country. And it dawned on me that all the great things that we did, most people were excluded who looked like me. You couldn't go in these places. You weren't even part of it. Then, most of the 20th century, we partitioned our architecture and our landscapes, meaning they would put a sign on a tree and say, whites only. You couldn't even go to a tree. We know about the water fountains, but entire landscapes, buildings were partitioned, movie houses. And so this is our history. And then desegregation happens, and I don't have anything over there. Because nothing's really happened that said we want to live together. And so this idea, then how do you think about this? And I want to leave something with you, that there are these dualities that exist in America. And I call them, they're tripartite. The first one is logic. We live in a double logic. You can go to some places, and the logic of these places are very different, and we don't care. Semiotic. We can go to places, and they'll look different. Black people must live here. Latinos must live here. How do we know that? Murals, no development, it's all there, and we live with it. And then the last thing is double consciousness. All of those people who live in those places, they have to live in those two worlds. People who don't, they can live in their own privileged world. So this is the task at hand in the work. So for years, close to 25 years, my studio has been trying to unpack this, but we couldn't really get people to understand left to right segregation. In this country, blacks live together, our capital stayed together. When we desegregated, the capital left because we could go to other places, and those places just festered. And so you can go to each one. That's Overtown today. Even Lincoln Center, if you go to the west, Dilla Scofidio transformed the whole campus, but the west side stayed the same. It's like, really? So development through arts and culture. So for us, we deal in this idea of memory, right? We try to think about getting people back into these places through narratives. And this idea of development through arts and culture has been very powerful in our storytelling, but also in getting people to put capital back in those places, to get people to see beauty daily, to just have basic things like trees. So San Juan Hill, beautiful story. I didn't even know about San Juan Hill, but evidently blacks were down in the Five Corners. They moved up to Hell's Kitchen, and they ended up with the Puerto Ricans in San Juan Hill. This is a place with Thelonious Monk. There are stories of Monk going out, piano Monk, right? And listening to the traffic to come up with discordance, right? But Monk lived in this neighborhood. But also other artists lived in this neighborhood, and they were all pushed out. So how can we bring some of those ideas back? In Overtown, very interesting, the rappers, when they go to Miami, they have these great parties in backyards. And they just make these amazing festivals. This is before Art Basel. And they just just party in the backyard. They had to get their own lights and everything. We're like, wow, that's kind of cool. And then in La Villa, they restored some of the old architecture, but I saw these abandoned shotgun houses that no one wanted. And so I was like, what are shotgun houses doing in La Villa? And can we use the shotgun house, a worker's house? And again, it's not tiny houses for young architects. Shotgun houses were 12 feet by 40 feet that people lived in. Today we have people living in sheds, but we actually have an architectural history that we can actually begin to use. So how do we harness this memory? The first project, Lincoln Center. That's NYCHA Housing, New York Housing Authority. New York is one of the more interesting places where working class people live in towers and have views. And the people who live here, they get to see the back of the bandshell, not the front of the bandshell. They actually get to watch people waiting on a show at the wall that keeps them out. And the last director during COVID was like, we're tearing down the wall. Now, I don't think he did it for good things. He literally wanted a new theater, for one. But they were like, we get a new theater, we tear down the wall. So they're like, Walter, we want to hire you, Weissman Frady, to help us out with this. So we went back and looked. This is what Lincoln Center got rid of. Right? This beautiful, from trade stores to churches to bakeries, they got rid of all this stuff. And this is what they put back in. So we said, what if we take the grid from NYCHA and then just put it over Lincoln Center and bring them back into the community? And this is what we're doing. Weissman Frady has designed a new stage, and we've taken everything that used to be a wall, and now if you're in NYCHA, you actually have your own Lincoln Center gardens. You can walk across the street, sit down, and be like, I'm in Lincoln Center. Versus the community was like, Walter, we don't feel comfortable going over there. It sits up on a hill. People look down on us. And so we said, okay, we'll bring you right through it. Now, this seems very simple. This has been the hardest thing to get through people's mind. They was like, well, why don't you have stairs? Because people don't want stairs. Why don't you do a scramp? People don't want a scramp. And people can't imagine that you can actually walk into a garden and find your way to Lincoln Center. Lincoln Center is huge. Existing conditions, this is the new condition. So we took the entire bandshell, tore it down, and used the geometry to create an overlook and a seating area that looks backwards and forwards. This is what Amsterdam, those people against the wall, this is what it will look like now. You'll actually be able to go right in. No other side of Lincoln Center is green. It has scramps, ramps, stairs, and garages. Instead of having water to look at, we're going to actually have water that you can go into. Right? A water mirror that reflects the world around them. A piece of sculpture in the middle of the schist that is in the island, even though we're on top of a parking garage. And lastly, we've been collecting letters from people. I asked my client to give us 6 typewriters? And we've gone out into the community with these analog things, and people have been writing great letters to Lincoln Center that will be part of this new seating area. It will have trees, groves, so that neighbors can come directly in, outdoor movies, but they'll get the same equity that the other sides will get. This will be open in 2 years. And from Amsterdam, the housing, you'll be able to walk right across the street into a quintessential New York park, right? Those little things you go in, people have their doggies, right? Brown and black people will have the same thing. And then from their living room, looking down, I'm on the 5th floor, looking down, now I just see this oasis, and I can even watch a concert from my window, which I think is gonna be awesome. Overtown, a little different. The freeway, how do we dismantle this? You ain't gonna get rid of it. Americans, man, we love those freeways. You guys love freeways here, from the 5 to the 405 to the 10. But this idea that we know why they went where they went. We know why the 5 is there. We know what they're separating. And so even here, we know the same thing. This freeway cut a neighborhood in half. And Overtown is literally what it means. It was like, let's put them over there. From Coconut Grove, they put all the brothers over there. built the freeway and the train. So we said, how do we take this street that's not connected and get people over there? And so we're designing basically a giant house. It was called House Music in the beginning. We were inspired by those backyards. It's just a huge shed. And this shed can be seen across the freeway, and it connects all the way through. And in this shed, you'll be able to do whatever you want to do. People will come. There's a beautiful restaurant on the other side. There's housing on both sides. And next to the archive building, there will now be this relationship that happens. And this is the old archives from the neighborhood. If you've been to Miami in the summer, oh my God, it's hot, there are no trees, and so here, we're like, you can grow anything here. So let's just create a vertical oasis. Again, this is a public street. And so now we're gonna have one of the largest sort of neophytes, epiphyte gardens that you'll have, and this will connect you back through the freeway. And then we have our last hairpick garden, where we take picks and actually create infrastructure for outdoor concerts and raves and other things. This will be built by 2028. And so hopefully we'll have the great rave there. We'll have some great rappers hanging out here and have a great show. The last project I want to share with you, this is the one that just got built last year. This is La Villa. This is the same image, but we were asked to design a park for the Johnson brothers. Lift Every Voice and Sing, they wrote the song. When I was a kid in school, never knew about the song. I knew about them as poets. They wrote the creation, you know? And God stepped out on space. He looked around and said, I'm lonely, I'll make me a world. But that was their quote. There was also this place called The Line. And The Line was the longest street that had all female ownership in La Villa. And they were all brothels, right? Which was back then big business. But the Johnson brothers, Zora Neale Hurston, they all hung out in these brothels. And that's where they cut their chops, meaning they would play music in the brothel. But that's how it all started. So we saw these shotgun houses, and I was like, what are these doing here? And some guy was like, oh, well, when the freeway came in, we had to move the houses, and we just put them over there. And I was like, can I have one? And they were like, what are you going to do with the houses? I was like, someone lived in these houses, and their spirit is still there. So we were designing a park, and I placed the house in the middle of the park. The Johnson brothers' house was a bigger place. It was a Victorian. But I wanted there to be something there that people could arrive to. And we had this idea that if we cut the side of the shotgun open, the spirits could always come out. And when I told my client that, they were like, huh? But when I told my people that, they were like, yeah. And they, yeah. And so we opened this about a year ago, and my God, did my people come out. And they used this space in ways that I could have never imagined. And I have to say, it's the spirit in that shotgun house, right? That there's something really familiar, right? And I'm hoping this happens in Lincoln Center and these other projects that people just gravitated to. And on opening day, people filled it. Now we have housing coming up to it, and it's now become a place in this vast, empty landscape. And I'm gonna play a couple videos to end, because I have 7 seconds, which hopefully will give you some flavor for what this little park does for the people who live in this underdeveloped landscape. This is really Black Joy, guys. And I invite you to go to their website. They program this place 7 days a week, almost 24/7. So that kind of gives you a taste of what's happening in this place. And this last little piece surprised me. We were sent this video by this young man, and he basically talked about how this place didn't exist. And this goes back to, I think, the gaming and a lot of these ideas we have, is that I think our future does depend on us trying to think of these places in different ways. Because our history, our understanding of our history, is the thing that's contaminating us and stopping us from actually seeing this. We just don't know it. I mean, in architecture school, you learn all this stuff, but you don't think about it. Someone in the 1950s is designing two separate but equal places. I can't get my brain around it. It's like, how do you rationalize that, right? Come on, guys.
My why is community. I came back here and my community has scattered. And I created R&B mostly just because I wanted to connect people through R&B music, but I realized people need spaces. They need safe spaces. Obviously music is a way to bring people together, but for this, I was gonna talk about this later, but I want y'all to be very mindful of this room that's being created. This whole class. It's a bunch of rock stars in this room. It's our job to change the city into what we want it to be. Because, I'm gonna say this later, all of this is made up. And made up just meaning this part did not exist. And now it exists. Because somebody had it in their brain that they wanted to create a part.
Thank you, guys.
Please welcome to the stage Albordes David Barragán.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me and thank you everybody who make it possible. It's a really honor to be here in this stage and sharing our work with you. Today I want to share with you the transformation of a book club into a community library in the Ecuadorian Amazon. This is the Amazon, one of the most biodiverse biomes in the world, shared by 9 countries. It's extremely big and is one of the most important areas in the world if we are talking about nurturing, we are talking about preservation, and we are talking about how we can create the different kind of symbiosis between humans and nature. That's why it's so important to understand the many ways that we can build and live and inhabit there. Our project is there in the Ecuadorian Amazon. I'm from Quito, Ecuador, and this is maybe one of the ideas that you have about the Amazon when we talk about this big nature. Always this kind of romantic idea about the perfect nature, these pristine, beautiful green areas with a lot of animals and the most amazing amount of different kinds of plants. And it is, but it is also a territory with a lot of contrast, with a lot of conflict, because there is a big pressure about all of the resources there. Ecuador, the first source of income is oil, so there's always the same problem: how to deal with the conservation, but at the same time with the oil extraction. So it depends of the government, but there's always a lot of pressure about this territory. And it's always about this, it's always about fighting, it's always one over the other. And it's not only the big companies, it's all, oh my God, what happened? Wait, okay. Yeah, it's not only the big oil companies, it's also about mining, and not only the big international mining companies from abroad, also illegal mining. So there's a lot of social conflicts, not only the conservation one there. And also, it's about deforestation. Deforestation to sell all of this high quality timber to the big luxury market to the global north, and also deforestation to monoculture. Always is the same. There's no possibility to do something that create any kind of symbiosis with nature and with humans. Always is the same. We are always doing a lot of destruction in our environment. And when you are talking about production, when you are talking about economy, when you are talking about destruction, always we are talking about different kind of settlements. Our community is here, Huaticocha, Ecuador. And they began to understand how to urbanize the Amazon, because it's like this. This is kind of not informal, but it's not the most planified area in the world. But there is people, there is local people trying to understand how to inhabit in this territory. It's one of the poorest areas in Ecuador, with the lack of services, with the lack of governmental attention, with the lack of everything. So they have a few possibilities. The most common is to migrate to bigger cities to find different kind of opportunities, but there are people like them who decide to stay in the territory and try to find a different ways to create a transformation there. But it's not possible to do it alone. You need to create a bigger group. That's why they create an association of farmers in order to understand the territory in a completely different way. Because, you know, if you want to create any transformation, it's impossible to do it by just yourself. You need more people to work with. And they began to see again their crops, and they began to understand if we produce with a completely different logic, an agroforestry, you produce at the same time that you preserve the forest. And this is the big transformation in their minds. And that's the way that they are that's the way that they are conserving the forest through all the production. First with coffee, but they discovered that need to do something more than just the production. They also began to got so many funding to create all of the infrastructure to scale up in order to try to understand so many new possibilities. Also, they began to do a lot of training to all of people who is associated to this big team. So little by little, they began to add value to the products and trying to close the close the circle from the crops to the exportation. They have all of the green certifications because it's the only way to transform their territory and create a well-being for all of the associated. But what is interesting about these guys, that they are not only working on the functional needs, on the economic needs. They are also thinking about their existential needs. And this is where architectures were in the project. This is before our participation with them. This is around 2020, 2021. And they began to do so many workshops about how will be the ideal project to enhance all of their production and at the same time their living. They said that in one of them is kind of funny because they have also a heliport there. But it's about this, it's about dream. If you don't dream, it's impossible to do anything. And then, little by little, through different kind of funding, there's a lot of different kind of NGOs and organizations and corporations working in the area. They got some money and began to build some infrastructure like this. We are in the middle of the Amazon, remember the images, but the infrastructure is is like this. For me, very precarious with the lack of design, but at least they can do something and they can produce. And in the middle of this architecture, there's a space of opportunity. And they began to understand that it's not only about production, it's also about education, and it's also about to create different kinds of social opportunities in order to transform the whole territory. And they began to create a book club, very small, 10 square meters, something like 100 square feet, very well organized. And they began to do so many activities with the kids. Immediately, since 2019, began a transformation of all of the all of the community, and also this space became a safe space for the kids. And this is very, very, very important. And also, as I told you before, the Amazon jungle has one of the lowest quality of education. So at the same time, it's kind of big tool to create a transformation and come from them. They decide to create this space. So as an architect, we always, when we are working in this kind of social projects, we work only underpinning ongoing projects. We don't work in this kind of top-down process, always bottom-up. If they have a project, if they have a book club, and if they want a library, why not to dream in a library in the Amazon jungle? But we need to understand how we can build this in these conditions. For us, participation in the design process is not something in a romantic way to try to involve people because people is important. No, it's something to change the rules, to change the conditions, to change the classic verticality structures and create something horizontal when we can share all of the information. When we talk about participation, is to understand all of the local conditions, is to immerse in a very quick way in their territory. And when we began to create this kind of exchange of information, this kind of exchange of knowledge, we immediately learned that they have access to these palm trees in the middle of the jungle, extremely hard. And they sent us some samples to the studio, and we began to test the joints. So it's always back and forth. They give us some knowledge, and we began to understand what we can do with this knowledge. And again, we send information to them. And it's the best way for us to understand not only the knowledge, also their skills and how we are going to make it possible. And quite important to understand all of the local conditions, because it's about memory, it's about tradition, it's about to keep all of this information alive. This is the aspirational house in the Amazon, because there's an idea that if you build with local materials, it's something for poor people, is not the best. You need to just do a copycat of the kind of aesthetic of the city, and you forgot your materials. This small temporary kiosk is built with one of the most strong palm trees in the world. So, when we understand that, we began to do all of the process, always working with models, because models not only led us to understand the structural performance of our projects, also led us to share with the community and led us to immediately add their feedback in the project, because they are going to build. So we know about the space, but they know about the materials. So the big transformation for us when we are working in this kind of environment is when we create this kind of synergy where everybody can add more information, more layers of complexity to the project. And then they go to the jungle, to their farms, cut the palm, and the big columns go into the structure. This is going to be impossible to do in the city and actually kind of stupid. But we are there, we have access to this material. So we decide to use 1 pound per column. It's around, I don't know, about 12 meters, just one big element, because we saw the opportunity there. And they know the material and they have access to the material. And again, in this process, to understand and to take advantage of all of the local knowledge and the local skills, we send all of the models, and you can see the construction. Why we send models? Because we come to a society, and actually in the global south, all of our builders don't go to any kind of school for construction to learn, I don't know, masonry or stuff like that. Everybody goes to learn in a very traditional way. Your father teach you how to build because everybody builds your houses. So it's a completely different learning process. So we take advantage of that. We know that they have a lot of skills, but it's the way that we can create completely different spaces if we send the model. Without the model, it's completely difficult to understand of the plans. So there's always this kind of exchange on site. We also, this is for us one of the most important moments always, because we are trying to understand if we are doing right or not. But when we saw stuff like this in the middle of the construction, on weekend, the kids and the organization began to use the space. So this is a necessity, and we need to finish the project. That's why for us it's important to underpinning projects instead to think in a top-down approach. And then a couple of months later, the project is finished, and immediately they are well organized and began all of the different kind of programs, and began to use the space in a completely different conditions. We never expected, of course, all of the uses that they have. And at the same time, when we are working in participation process, we are trying to create a long-term relationship. Now we are developing with them a few more projects. This space that was thinking for kids, now we are using as our space for the new workshops, and also the community used to use the space for different kind of gathers and work stuff. Then there's a first floor with the open reading room for the kids, also so many different kind of workshops. They spend a lot of time thinking so many activities, and imagine that a community library in the middle of the Amazon, where a kind of place that nobody cares, were invited to the Quito, the capital of Ecuador, to be involved in a marathon of tales. And for us, it's a kind of proud to see how architecture is able to underpin all of their process, because they are very well organized and they are creating so many stuff, and the space is supporting all of their organization. Finally, the balcony, and for us, architecture is like this. We thought about the balcony and try to promote an experience, but they are the final users, and they find so many ways to use and flow with the space. This is this is the idea of the project, the thatched roof, thatched because we are building with the local vernacular techniques, and these are made of, is weaving with a local straw. This is the project in the middle of the jungle, contemporary architecture made of local materials, designed and built with the community. And for us was amazing when we saw this, because the architecture became part of their identity, and now is part of the brand. And the new because they rebrand the chocolates, have the image of the of the library. This is our small town. I said our because we travel a lot and we right now feel part of the community. And for us, it's kind of amazing to see all of the transformation that a community can do when they began to think about how to inhabit their place without creating any kind of a struggle with the nature and without any kind of destruction. So there's a complete symbiosis. The agroforestry understand very well that if you produce on site, at the same time you're creating conservation. We are building the new projects over there, the new facilities for Amazonian superfoods, the new facilities for a lab with to produce bio inputs because they don't want to use pesticides and any kind of chemicals. So I hope to see you again and tell you more about the new buildings that we are developing for this community. Thank you so much.
Please welcome to the stage Kulapat Yantrasast.
Thank you very much. We still have some left in the audience, so that seems like a good time. Thank you very much. I'm here, first of all, to thank the BBC here, the two Beatrice and Zoe. I'm sure we're all so inspired by what I have to unpack the whole day, because these are, I mean, as a design professional, to be able to really bring the world to LA in this way is so meaningful, and every story really allows us to really think about what we can do in our profession. So this is so meaningful. So thank you for that. I myself, many of you might know me, but if I can do a quick introduction. So I was born in Thailand. That's my hometown, Bangkok, which, I'm so proud of my Bangkok sister coach here, who have done a great job, really taught about her work and give the context of what we are in Bangkok and what we could do in that context. That's really meaningful. I spent 15 years in Japan. I studied there and worked there before I moved to Los Angeles. And for that, listening to Stephanie's talk about Frank today, it reminded me that when I was there, moved here 22 years ago, Frank Gehry was one of the reasons why I moved here. I think, and also because before him, the Eames. I mean, if I feel that if people from outside can come and do something here, at that time I was 35, I felt like I was too old to move anywhere. But I feel like, okay, well, if you can do it, perhaps that could be a good chance. And LA has been such a wonderful home for me. And like what Stephanie mentioned, that after Frank passed, we feel like things a little bit dim because he's such a big figure and really generous in his way. So by today, just by listening to everyone here, it gave me such a hope that LA could be, again, the center of creativity as we've always been. So that's my hope. I'm talking about culture in some sense, and I'm trying to add to conversation today in the humble way I could, is that the power of art in transformation. Right? We talked about nature, we talked about communities, we talked about cities. I think art, in a way, has a place in there. We're in an art museum here. As we mentioned, as a place, as a town square of thinking, of gathering, of inspiration. I think that's a part that's so crucial. And in that sense, I think this is how I see the world, in a weird way. When I grew up in Thailand, we're a tiny guy like that, between China and India, right? So when you're a small person between giants, you learn to behave. Keep your elbows, you think about the power, the cultures, everything else. I mean, a lot of things in our culture come from the influence from these giants. Japan is not. Japan is spreading out at the edge of Asia, on islands, no one bother him, floating around, right? And so that's kind of what it is. And it kind of funny because we're both Buddhist countries. We both eat rice. not sticky rice, but you know, at the same time, you know, like it does dawn on me, like how can we really make sense of culture and how it revive? Because when we see the end product, we understand, oh, maybe things can be copied, things can be inspired, but deep down we have our roots and our habits to do. And that's when I look at food, and cooking is maybe the most fundamental transformation we have in our life every day. When we cook something very raw into the cooked, and what it means to us, we put life and meanings into it. Japanese food, as we all know, is all about clarity, it's about unity. It's raw most of the time, it's raw as in uncooked. Right, but you know, I mean, the clarity of thought could not be even more clear. Things are very one flavor at a time, intense communication. Thai food is the opposite. Thai food also reflects the fact that we have to be really dealing with influence from India and China all the time. You know, things coming through the spices, the ingredients, the taste system, and all of that. It allowed us to kind of develop this weird sense of improvisation and mixture. You know, we don't want one flavor at a time, we want every flavor at the same time. How can we do that? And you know, like for a small country, I think out loud, like, why is Thai food so recognizable comparing to others? And it's really our ability to really blend things which are mostly very different together into one. To the point that I said in a previous conversation before that I think culture is moving from sushi to pad thai. And the reason I'm saying that is because we don't have an exclusive dictator of taste. Like we don't have Albert Speer. We don't have someone to tell this is what architecture should be. We don't have a patron who's one person can pay for everything. Whether it's good or bad thing, we don't have that. Now we have communities, we have stakeholders, we have so many people who come at the table. We all know them. We all know that, you know, in addition to power, politics, ego, and other things, so how can you cook something out of those and make something unique and clear at the same time? Thai food, right? So I think that's something we should learn from. Now back to this project, you know, which is fresh, just opened 2 months ago. This is Thailand, this Bangkok itself, like which, of course, has shown also in the morning, in the afternoon. The little dot there is the location for this Dip Museum. And this Dip Museum, which is this building right here, is actually, you know, is really led by our design director, Brian, which is somewhere here, Brian Butterfield, and has worked on it just at the beginning of the pandemic, around the year 2000. And, you know, we have a visionary collector, founder who sadly passed away 2 years ago, Pech Osatanukroh, who I know for many, many years. And Pech, for 40 years, have been wanting to create this museum. And his dream is, like, he wanted Thai artists to be on the same platform with international artists, to see that the talents we have is not in a different category. It should communicate and excel each other. And so after talking to around 30 architects around the world, you know, I become the architect so we built this together. So this long building that you see is actually a warehouse that we kind of renovate and we add something onto it as a part of it. This is what it used to be. It was a long warehouse, you know, used to be parking and other things. Again, the idea was to create this acupuncture transformation to make it into different places. This is one of the first sketch I did, which is something that, you know, maybe because I'm obsessed with courtyard and place, so I feel like it cannot just be a building, it has to be a place. So the idea that by moving things around and create additional spaces that the long building do not have, square spaces, outdoor spaces, and courtyard that allow things to happen in many cases as well. This is part of the picture. So you can see the long building we wrapped around. It's 3-story from first, which is all open, second and the third, and we add skylight onto the top. And by talking to him and really understand, again, we also include Thai artists. Many of them are people I respect and work with very often as to what is the right thing to do. This is our opportunity to build something meaningful for Bangkok. This is supposed to be a springboard for the Thai artists to really spring out and be engaged. You know, many of them already well known, but many are the places. And being Thai myself, I can say that we're perhaps one of the most creative communities. We love to solve problems. You can say from Kosh and me, we love to make funs and make funny jokes and many other things. I think that's something that we want it to be. So for that, we started, this is a video that, they started just to think of the transformation process itself. We try to make something that's meaningful for the local community. I think working with our local architect, A. Futunai, which is one of the best architects in Thailand, we think about how we can build something that withstand the climate, which is very tropical. And so one of the things of the building is so extremely flexible. You can see here, there's a lot of things I added on from my little iPad. So, you can see we have water. Back to what Kosh also mentioned, Bangkok itself is almost at sea level. So we get flood all the time. And this is very close to the river and to the port. So we actually built the garage underground as a water tank so that if it floods, the water can go into the reservoir. At the same time, the garage itself is built as a very tall ceiling, maybe around 5 meters. So it also functions as a concert hall and other places as well, including some of these aspects that we take on from the Thai architecture itself. Again, you can see the relationship of the building and the courtyard and other things. And I feel it's very important because, maybe being here, these are my two hometowns, Bangkok and Los Angeles. Both actually City of Angels because Krung Thep, which is the name of Bangkok, is actually City of Angels as well. So I feel that there's something about that and the idea that people come into the center of a place which is empty and then they can look around and see what they want to do rather than enter to a door into a building. I think that's something that always a big part of what I like. And surprisingly, because as I designed it, and someone told me it kind of looked like a Thai temple. Because a Thai temple come in a courtyard, and you have the big building, you have many other things, including the pagoda. And so when we proposed the idea of the sculpture chapel over there, you see, it's a feel like a pagoda in some funny ways, which may be uncanny. It's in the back of my mind, but that was part of the conversation that we have done. And we work on it, throughout the pandemic, with the work and other things. This is the axonometry, just to give you a quick idea of what that is. Again, I think it's built as flexible as we could because the collection is quite deep, but also allowed many other new commissions and collaborations to happen later. In terms of ecology, you mentioned, we talked about water before. The other part is also the sun, and we have a very, very strong sun in Bangkok itself. The idea of how we can design so that it shades each other, people, the art, and so forth. So this is part of that. The idea of how you arrive into it, this is just the sketches to see what kind of materials we bring into it. We also have a role in the landscape design as well. We don't have a lot of that, but we try to create an integration of the green walls, built-in plan that really directly to the senses, in the sense of the flowers and the flora and fauna of the local Thai aspect of thing. And the relationship between the indoor-outdoor is something that we like to try to create. Is one thing that we have proposed that they didn't get built, which is we want to get a crane over the elevator to be able to lift object up into the, but it was cut out because of value engineering, so that didn't happen, but still live on in the drawing itself. Again, this is, or maybe the sound a bit too strong, just to show you because, maybe the photograph is not as good. It instantly becoming a big hit for a lot of people. A lot of people find themselves into it. You see the cafe and the young pop energy in Bangkok is really quite remarkable. And it will open at the same time that we have such a surge in creativity and tourism and collaboration that happen in Bangkok itself. So it really kind of catalysts everything onto it, which I'm very glad to see. This is Alicia Corday. I'm not sure you know her. She's the artist who made this work when she was installed and really talked about her relationship to the buildings and other. And in many funny way, I feel like I'm creating a courtyard, which is almost like the rock garden of Kyoto, which is empty. And she come in and places this rock and allow that to work together in a meaningful way. So that's her. She is. This is the building. You can see a little bit of the port of Bangkok right behind. You can see this building. We also have the billboard to the left, which is the billboard. It's maybe the largest art billboard in Bangkok. So with changes of art, I mean, every season. So like millions of people on the freeway can see the artwork itself as well. This is looking inside. I'm sorry, this before the art go in, so you can't really see too much. This is another view from another tourist who put this on. So I just snap it because it maybe say better than what I could. Yes. But one thing, this is the scene from the opening weekend. One thing that Petch, the founder, really wanted was to bring a place that, again, put the Thai creativity and interculturality together. And I felt that we have done that. My own interest is to create a place that allows people to come together. For me, it's very important. What is a museum? Museum, a lot of time, I work in museums all over America and the world as well. And I feel like art in the capital A is very intimidating to most people. And a lot of people, I mean, not even allowed to be in. So the idea of turning a museum, which is a 19th century colonial product, into a place of community is something that we must do. And so I think it's important, the word that I use a lot is museums as a site of empathy. Museums is actually a place where you go to understand the story of other people, right? And not only just contemporary art, but I mean, you go. For me, we now working. We finished doing at the Met last year, and we're working 2 weeks at the Louvre in Paris now. And I remember I went to the Louvre my first time when I was 7, when my parents took me there. I really hated it. But at the first time, I saw work which is not from my country. I saw Egyptian art, I saw European art and other things. At the same time, when we designed the Rockefeller Wing at the Met, which is African art and Oceanic art and ancient American art, I think less about the New Yorkers because I think they would go regardless. But I think about Asian tourists just like myself, Asian kids who come to New York for the first time, encountering African art for the first time. What do they think? What is them they can take back home that allow them to understand that there are peoples who are different than them who make this wonderful art that they can also respect and learn from. So that's, I think, is the place and the function of museums in general. So out of that, these are these opening shows. We have wonderful, from Ansel Kiefer over there to amazing Mun Thien Bunma, who's a very important Thai artist who passed away 2 decades ago, down to Apichat Pong, who's amazing Thai artist who actually studied architecture and really have done. So to really bring international voices together, this is my last slide as a way of inviting everyone to come visit us in Bangkok. When Michael Gove came, we did a little dinner for him together. So this is an invitation, red carpet for all of you. I think Bangkok is always there, and I look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Patricia Urquiola with Beatrice Grenier in conversation, Metamorphosa.
So thank you. Thank you for this wonderful day of very inspiring conversations. It turns out we all have a lot to say about transformation. So I'm very happy we chose this topic because clearly it's a necessary key word in architecture and design. And Patricia and I have the difficult but beautiful task to end the day. And I think Kulapart gave a us a kind of wonderful platform to continue to meditate on the role of museums, art, but also exhibition making in reflecting on the role and temporality of transformation. And it's an honor to discuss this topic with you, Patricia, because you are a kind of avatar of transformation in many ways. Your practice really encompasses many keywords that are synonyms or derivatives of transformation, such as metamorphosis or alchemy or experimentation. So we will discuss these words as you see the kind of images of Patricia's recent projects in the background of our conversation. But I wanted to be able, in our short but intense talk, to hear you on your practice, how it operates, at so many different scales, be them domestic or in the public space, or in the integrating really the ambition of the supply chain scale in terms of your research and materials, and also reflect together with you beyond your research and practice, how you yourself are reinventing the role of the designer. It seems from the very beginning of your career, you adopted Milan as your city, a city that is so synonymous with the history of modern design, and are continuously transforming what it means to be a designer in the city and addressing your work to the world. So perhaps the first project that I would like to hear from you in terms of the process, but also its significance in your work is a project that is still ongoing, that recently opened late last year at Grand ONU in Belgium. And it's an exhibition which is titled Metamorphosa. So it's a very special project because it introduces the notion that transformation is an open-ended process. So please tell us about this project and your approach to it and what you sought to accomplish with it.
Well, now Metamorphosa is an exhibition that a museum in Belgium, which is a special site for Belgium because it's not in Brussels, it's not in a very clear place, has a lot of historical values. No, that it was a place very important in the 800s, and then had a lot of transformation, and after quite losing it, this big space became a museum of design and art. Then there is a young woman, a director and a curator of the things that are happening in design, and she asked me, so 2 years ago, to do this exhibition that is half of the year, it's a few months, and because she was really interested about all the changes, the transformations. When I am using the words that
we're up to 501 uses of the word transformation.
No, but we are using them because it's just to connect. No, because today I was associating all those words to really very different ways. Then the first thing to think is that. Fantastic news that really there are so many ways to diversify the possibilities of transform our reality, no? But what she asked me was to do an exhibition about this kind of, because the place has been so many times for her was a place that needed a kind of big dialogue with design. Then she made me go there, we saw the place, and there was a really immense, out of a scale, not a human space, but was a place, like a warehouse for minerals and things. And that big dome or this long space, you could only get from the center. Then I was saying to her, if we are going to speak about products, and that is part of this story, that image. Perhaps what I like, Echo, I think when we are speaking about changes and metamorphose, was a conversation with her. And I was saying, I think metamorphose is a beautiful word, because it's when you have two kinds of life, no, the caterpillar and the butterfly, no, and there is the moment, the cocoon moment, which is the moment which is a complicated moment, is protected in some way, but is the moment when if we translate to us, is the moment when you really you are protected and you can have ideas to change things. But at the same time, is the moment which is more delicate, because all the transformation happen in that moment. Then we dedicated to that. Then we went. I said we are going to get into the place in the middle, and we are going to have half of the space, and the other half of the space, one is going to be the caterpillar side, and the other one is going to be the butterfly. Then are going to happen two different lives in one life. No, then that was the conversation all the time, and I like the idea that we were getting remaining within the change. I like thing. I call that sometimes you have to stop and to create like a very calm moment, and that was for me the idea. For example, the light, we put a kind of celestial light and a real light. Then we were really in a situation that something was happening in your mind. It was very, very a bit surreal in some way. At the same time, all the pieces, they were together. One about several about ceramics, other about glass, other one about bioplastic, different always, but they were always floating in a kind of wool platform, and all the things were very gentle put there. And I think the way we communicate that interest through those pieces, that was not the object of the problem or the argument. It was more about how can we go through those projects, just getting only the important thing. All those products, they were products that for me, they were a moment that with a company, I got a kind of change. I got then something in the process, in the state of mind of the company. I do a lot of, I'm not so gentle working. I say in a nice way.
Transformation is not always gentle.
I'm dense, I know, and then we make a lot of fun many times, but we know that at the end, all those things that come, a lot of discussions. Then at the end, the products, they get into land, but there was a very playful thing about that.
In the exhibition, you mentioned which something I think is a very beautiful concept, that you enter at the center, and there's a choice you make between left and right, and on both ends, which are in a way not end points of the exhibition, you chose to place two works on textile, tapestry. Well, this is a very beautiful idea, because textile and tapestries imply a kind of fragment of something that could be going on for a longer time, or could be infinite. As Andrea Branzi used to say about the textile as being this fragment of an unlimited dimension. I wanted to hear a little bit about the role of textile in your work.
I'm a big lover of textile, and I think textile is always, always has a function that can be, worth the space, or can be a softer floor. That has obviously different functions. But another one that I think is always incredible, that you can always introduce like a window to something, which is so other words, no, and in that case, when we began this project, I had I don't know how do you say shingles, shingles is like this in this arm. Then nothing worse than that, because I come back from a long travel. There were a lot of things happening to me in that moment, and I said to her, perhaps at the end of this building, there was a kind of little chapel, and as designer, I will say tendenциally, I don't want to use that space because it was a little bit too strong in some way. But I said, perhaps we are gonna work on that, because in Italy we call shingles, we call it the fire of St. Anthony, and we're still having this long dramatic name. Flaubert dedicated all his life to study the temptations of which are the fire of St. Anthony. And I said to her, perhaps the only way to take out this fire of St. Anthony that I have is to put it into the project, and it's going to be my metamorphose. Then it's going to be a narrative room. And we went, what I liked that in all this kind of research, fire, as today was an argument, I think is, I think it's very interesting, because as when we speak about that, we speak about communities, the fire in many ways. But in my case, was an inside fire. In all that historical presence is about the temptation. Is about suffering. It's about something which is very inside us. And I like it a lot to play with that, like a conclusion or a threshold at the end of the exhibition. And we did a big tapestry, but a tapestry that was part of it with a scene with St. Anthony that finds St. Paul, and he's just taking energy in that amitié, in that friendship, energy, but done with a very industrial machines, and it's looking very traditional, but it's the most industrial side of the tapestry. And all around, done by hand with a community of girls that I know in India. We are very friends, and we work for a long time, and playing the two sides of craft and industry. Then there were a lot of talisman. I had to go out of my San Antonio fire, then San Antonio fire. Then the talisman is another thing that is an argument that I think is very, very, very interesting today. Many times I think the power and the value of talisman is very interesting. I think the relic is something that connect you to the past, but the talisman is always a protection, always coming back to that cocoon moment. I think is so important to, so we live in an era of I think the only constant is change. Then there is, for example, a very interesting philosopher woman, Rosi Braidotti, that she did a book about metamorphosis. There is Emanuele Cocha writing about metamorphosis. There are many reasons that they are speaking about that, because I think one of the most important constants is change. And then that makes us think that ideas, I think as designer, I think I can't fix my work into permanence. As I am an architect too, no? That even being a permanence, that is a very interesting word when you're speaking about architecture, I think is not anymore so attractive or so important. When you are going to do the product that is going to be timeless, that was a fantastic conversation, but now I don't believe so much. I am art director of a company in Italy that has a lot of timeless pieces, but I don't know.
Keep on reinventing them.
I don't know why they want me there, because I don't have the. Then possibly they are 10 years. But we are going to arrive not to the centenary. But my attitude in this moment is not about how much can we do timeless pieces, you know. I'm not thinking about permanence. I'm thinking more about how materia can be interesting, or how can we, because materia is always connected to many other hours, many other values, tell us a lot of stories. It's not neutral. Then we are approaching the process of what we do in a different way. Then not about the permanence went in a second side.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know why I'm saying that.
Because it's related also to another important project that you realized recently. It's related to alchemy, I think, which is a process of change that includes many steps, but as this kind of predecessor to chemistry, it is something that is always ongoing. And very interestingly, in this project, the setting place of change or transformation in this case is the home, which is a underestimated radical place of transformation. What do you think?
As you know, domestic landscape is everywhere. We know. No, we work and live everywhere. We know this argument is so. I have the garden in the desert of the last. It's gonna be with me like an obsession for I know for a few days. I love it, that guy. That is my garden. It's gonna be for this period. I think in Salone del Mobile, being Milanese and working there, there was, and they needed that I did a kind of little, riflessione about the domestic spaces. And they have an old building, Palacio Bovara, which is in the middle of the city, 700, with a beautiful story. And with rooms, they were saying, perhaps you can work in different arguments. And I said, but impossible to work like this. And perhaps if we are thinking about this, let us think about all the alchemical metaphors that we can use in this period. Another argument that I like, no? Then, alchemia is always an argument that it has different phases, no? And then you have the Nigredo, which is the first phase that you need to, there is fire, there is density, there is dark, there is energy, there is melting. That is a fantastic argument. Then we work it for the first two rooms about this argument. Then there is the albedo, another argument that I like a lot because it's the moment of purity. That for a long time I've been educated that design should have to do a lot to do with purity, because we are always trying to be, to do the piece is a good design because you find function and form and all these things. As I come from a rationalist education like all of us, but I think for many reasons we went through many other arguments in the middle. Then the purity, the moment of this perfection, I'm not searching for that. Then I think we had a room that was really white, and we were putting all the prejudices, not that I have of purity, which are good, but and then we went into the main spaces that they came like gardens. Then the garden got into this old building, very classic, that were the most decorative rooms. And we were putting a lot of things inside. Just to say, the rubedo is when the end of the cycle. But at the end of the cycle, you come back. You could go another time to the first level. Then the circularity, no? Then Alchemica, I think, is an argument that we did a lot of talks about that. I like it a lot. And now, for example, in Milano, there is, this week, we saw an exhibition in Palazzo Reale. I don't go so many times. They do fantastic. But there is a big salone, the big place, which is the Salone dei Cariatidi, which is been bombed in the Second War and is still a little bit destroyed. Then it's done. And now there is Kiefer, which is doing an exhibition done for this with 30 alchemical women dedicated to that, with all the 30 cariatid in the room. No, then I thought he was into an argument that is we are crossing into the city.
So we have time just for a few more words. I wanted to ask you about other projects that we saw on the screen. Visibly, in your practice, the exhibition plays such a big role in terms of your research and elaborating your philosophy. But we saw today so many different versions of what a designer is and what kinds of problems they address. So for the last few seconds, I just wanted a few words from you in terms of your definition of what is a designer today.
Well, I think today, the way if I'm just thinking the week I've done before arriving here, I live in Milano, I went to Madrid, and there is we are trying to create a community to defend and to create a culture about wool, because Spain has the best merino wool, and we're still producing a lot, and we don't know how to. We lost the culture to develop it, and then we sell all of it, and at the end runs through all Europe, and then ends many times in Italy, and they finally filter and they do the right material. Then they asked me to come and to participate to a different. We are creating a kind of alianza for wool, and that is I'm very happy because each one is gonna do different things, and there are roots about transhumance, and there was a shipper in that 2 days speaking about this argument, a girl that was incredible, like the gardener in the desert. She was explaining to us so many things that we really, I think we are going to work this year in that way. At the same time, I'm working with a company in Italia, that in Spain, that is, we are doing bioplastic, and bioplastic, perhaps we are interested or not, but it's a biotechnopolymer that is substituting a lot of other kind of molds they had before. And I am very happy because we began to do it before COVID, and now they had a few machines and a few machineries and a lot of things, and they moved them from Italy to Spain. And now we were doing a conversation with a group of people, and we were saying possibly we should do a kind of farm for growing different other biomaterials, and they are finding a place. Perhaps we are moving from that industrial company to enlarge things that for me were dreams, but that today are happening. Then or they can happen. Me, I want to believe they are going to happen. Then it's been a week where I am inside different other conversations, and I think designers, we are really enlarging our capacities, I think, to be to help to different kinds of transformation.
Beautiful. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, Beatrice and Patricia. To everybody in our final second session for your inspiring talks and contributions. Thank you, Zoe, Ryan. Thank you to the Hammer team, the tech team, everybody who is involved in today. We're so grateful for everything that you've done. Thank you all for making it to the end of the day. I want to say thank you so much to all of our partners, the World Around's global cultural partner, Fondation Cartier, the World Around's partner, Uniform Multaney Group, the World Around's Young Climate Prize partner, Miller Knoll. I also want to thank our board of trustees, one of whom is here today, and I also want to thank all of our Circles members. And finally, if you were able to join us for a drink in the courtyard, I want to thank the people that are sponsoring those drinks, East West Bank and Novita PR. Thank you both so much for supporting the rest of the evening. I really look forward to being in touch with all of you. I hope that you enjoyed today. Please let us know how you felt about it all. Please stay in touch with us. And yeah, hopefully we'll be back for more programs in LA in the future. We've really loved being here. And I thank so much all of our speakers and everyone who has been involved in the day. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
This concludes In Focus Transformation. Thank you for joining us today and engaging in these conversations.